Good morning, everybody. Welcome on behalf of the President of Dauphine. I'm very happy to welcome you here. For this second conference, we are organizing in cooperation with Gaia-X, with the Gaia-X Institute in particular, about the economics and technology of data sharing. Last year, we had the first conference. The first conference was organized around the new regulatory framework that was just passed by the Commission and the European Parliament. And this year, we are discussing the various implementation challenges. This conference has been organized by a group of 4 people in particular. Before all, Hubert Tardieu, who initiated all this. Then Jakob Rehof, who is a professor in Dortmund, and you have all his title over there, so I won't read everything. The important dimension is that is a computer scientist, specialist of complex application. So of course on data sharing, but is now also very much involved in research around artificial intelligence, which is a good news for us in Dauphine, because in the framework of PSL, we are one of the French, we belong to one of the French research institute dedicated to research on artificial intelligence. And so this is another domain of cooperation between our 2 universities and our 2 networks. Joëlle Toledano, who is a very distinguished professor, emeritus professor in Dauphine, a former regulator, with also a lot of experience in the industry and a very active member of the Chair Governance and Regulation. And this group of 4 people has been putting all that project together, and I hope we'll have a very stimulating debate today. I would like to, of course, thank all the speakers that have accepted to share with us their knowledge. And let me briefly introduce the organization of this morning. And afternoon, the whole day. So we'll have, it will be organized around 4 sessions. In the morning, we'll have 2 sessions that we will introduce later on after the keynote by Laure de la Raudière. And the 2 first sessions are built around the dynamic of the building of data sharing ecosystems. We will discuss first the dynamic of the creation of ecosystems. So why and how, in fact, use case and more generally data ecosystem can be built by a collection of heterogeneous, usually stakeholders. And so the question is how to align the interest, how to build trust, how to manage the dynamic of creation. In the second session, we'll insist on the very important role of the orchestrators of those ecosystems. And we'll try to better understand both their role and the potential business models that could sustain the development of those orchestrators. After the lunch, we will have 2 sessions that, and I let my co-organizer and mate Jakob to introduce them.
Yes, thank you very much. And also from my end, welcome everyone. I want to take also this opportunity to thank Eric for the great, and his team, for the, as always, great organization in this wonderful venue, which, as some of you may know, used to be the main meeting room of the NATO headquarters, which was the building in which we are today. And I think it's a fantastic room. And so we're really pleased to be here again. We hope to be here again next year around the same time. I want to take this opportunity also to thank the Gaia-X Board of Directors for supporting this event. And I'm really excited to be here and also to move forward together with you again, Eric. So for the afternoon, we are going to have two sessions. One will be concerned with the challenge of compliance and compliance by design. So compliance is an important topic in implementation. Regulation leads to requirements, and requirements lead to the need for compliance. But the question is, how do you support compliance so as not to make it too difficult to be compliant with regulation and to check that you are compliant with regulation? So that's the topic that we'll be discussing in the first session in the afternoon after the lunch break. And then moving further, at the end of the day, we'll have the fourth roundtable on public policies beyond regulation and subsidies. Regulation and policy is the topic. And so the background here, of course, is that regulation in this field is not something that you can just consider a done deal. It needs to keep adapting to future requirements and future developments. Of course, we have on the horizon this huge topic of AI that Eric already mentioned. But for today, we're focusing on the further policy development in the context of the European Commission and the EU member states going forward into the next period, starting here at the end of the year. And so that will be the topic for the last session today. So we hope that you will have an interesting day with us. And with that, let's get started.
One of the advantages of this room beyond this historic imprint is that it's a room that is very well fitted to organize debates. And so we will organize the various roundtables on the same principle. The various invited speakers will have something like 10 minutes to introduce the case or their viewpoint on the development of economics and technology of data sharing, and then we'll organize a debate among them first, but also among the speakers of the different panels, and of course with the audience. Okay, so. And we'll have also coffee breaks, etc., for those who will be unable to raise their questions or viewpoint during the debates. But before that, I am very, very happy and honored to welcome Laure de la Raudière, who is the president of Arcep. Arcep is a French regulator for electronic communication. And beyond that, Arcep is now responsible for the regulation of data sharing platforms and for the implementation of the Data Act and the Data Governance Act. So I think this is very important to have the viewpoint of one of the regulators, the European regulator, involved in this new field of regulation. And Laure, the floor is yours. And again, thank you for having accepted to give the introductory keynote for this conference.
Du fait des nouvelles missions confiées à l'Arcep par la loi Sécuriser et réguler l'espace numérique en mai dernier, mais aussi de notre engagement de longue date à l'ouverture des écosystèmes numériques et aussi à favoriser concurrence et innovation dans ce secteur, je suis très heureuse qu'une telle conférence se tienne. Je suis aussi heureuse de voir réunis aujourd'hui le monde académique, les acteurs privés et les acteurs de la régulation ici dans cette conférence. Depuis longtemps, alors depuis une bonne dizaine d'années maintenant, on parle d'économie de la donnée. Il me semble que ce concept est désormais dépassé, tant l'usage de la donnée irrigue l'ensemble de notre économie. Désormais, je pense que l'on peut parler d'une économie par la donnée. C'est ce contexte plus nouveau qui rend de tels échanges particulièrement précieux. Nous ne sommes plus au stade où il faut convaincre de la pertinence de l'accès à des données. L'histoire est passée par là, et les lois aussi, que ce soit en France avec la loi pour une république numérique, ou en Europe avec le Data Act, le Data Governance Act, et pour les données du service public, la directive Public Sector Information, pour ne citer que quelques textes. Alors, comme le suggère l'intitulé de votre conférence, le cadre est désormais posé. Désormais, il n'y a plus qu'à, pourrait-on dire. Pour autant, les choses ne sont pas aussi simples. J'aimerais d'abord, comme cela a déjà été fait dans ces lieux, ici, dans cette chaire en particulier, citer le célèbre sociologue, fondateur du Media Lab de Sciences Po, Bruno Latour. Décidément, on ne devrait jamais parler de données, mais d'obtenus. Cela met l'accent sur l'enjeu majeur, celui des modalités d'accès et des conditions de partage de ces données. Enjeu auquel la stratégie européenne de la donnée apporte des éléments de réponse. C'est en partie dans les modalités d'accès que tout se joue aujourd'hui. En effet, s'il a fallu plus d'une décennie pour que les cadres de partage et d'accès aux données soient posés, c'est bien qu'il fallait formuler des hypothèses, poser des conditions, les discuter, les débattre, les tester parfois, afin de répondre à un certain nombre de questions. Quelles données doivent être par principe libérées et mises en open data? Quelles données relèvent des données personnelles? Quels garde-fous faut-il mettre en place pour inciter les entreprises à partager leurs données tout en apportant la confiance nécessaire? Comment éviter que le partage des données ne bénéficie qu'à un nombre très limité d'acteurs du numérique? De nombreux économistes ont apporté des éclairages à ces questions, certains d'entre vous d'ailleurs, et je les en remercie. Leur travail important a permis de justifier l'importance de l'intervention publique et a contribué à définir le cadre de l'économie par la donnée. Désormais, c'est donc le temps de l'action, de la mise à l'épreuve du réel. Dans ce contexte, nous, acteurs publics, régulateurs, nous avons une responsabilité, celle de rendre les choses possibles. En pratique, à l'Arcep, cela passe notamment par la mise en place du cadre européen en matière de partage et d'accès de la donnée pour les entreprises, c'est-à-dire essentiellement la mise en œuvre du Data Governance Act et du Data Act, qui nous concerne depuis l'adoption de la loi pour sécuriser et réguler l'espace numérique, la loi SREN. Nous le faisons avec enthousiasme et détermination. Notre façon d'agir est en concertation avec les autres régulateurs français et européens. Je pense tout particulièrement à la CNIL, bien sûr, quand on parle de données, mais aussi aux autres régulateurs européens des communications électroniques dans les échanges que nous avons au sein du BEREC, ou aux différents acteurs réunis au sein du Comité européen de l'innovation en matière de données, créé par le Data Governance Act, le DIB, le European Data Innovation Board, et hasard du calendrier, ces régulateurs, dont l'Arcep et la CNIL, sont justement réunis aujourd'hui à Bruxelles pour la mise en œuvre de ce cadre, cette coordination nécessaire, pendant la 4e séance plénière de l'EDIB. En pratique, l'Arcep a ouvert dès la promulgation de la loi SREN, exactement le lendemain, une plateforme pour permettre aux prestataires de services d'intermédiation de données de se notifier en France pour toute l'Europe et de demander leur labellisation. Le maître mot dans notre approche est celui de l'esprit du Data Governance Act. Instaurer la confiance pour faciliter le partage des données. Nous cherchons donc d'abord à renforcer la confiance de tous sur notre approche. Notre posture est celle de l'accompagnement. Nous cherchons à établir un dialogue nourri et constructif avec les prestataires de services d'intermédiation de données, bien sûr. Notre approche dans le processus de labellisation est donc pragmatique. Pour la notification, c'est assez simple. Ils nous envoient leur notification et on va vérifier naturellement qu'ils respectent la loi. Pour la labellisation, c'est un acte positif en fait du régulateur. On délivre un label. Et donc, on a bien évidemment un travail de fond à faire pour établir comment délivrer ce label et à quelles conditions. Alors, la loi est suffisamment précise et on se coordonne avec les autres régulateurs européens pour qu'il y ait une harmonisation au niveau européen dans les pratiques. Mais nous avons en tête que le processus de labellisation doit être pragmatique et réactif. La régulation, en fait, ne doit jamais être hors sol. Mais nous devons aussi, en tant que régulateurs, c'est tout l'équilibre intéressant de la régulation, garantir la confiance dans la robustesse de la labellisation. Nous ne prenons donc pas les critères à la légère, bien évidemment, et notamment en ce qui concerne la neutralité des intermédiaires, mais pas que. Le Data Governance Act est applicable depuis septembre 2023. En Europe, il y a une dizaine de services d'intermédiation de données qui se sont déclarés auprès d'un régulateur et c'est une déclaration, vous le savez, qui a valeur au niveau européen et dont plus de la moitié, même une grosse moitié, est en France. C'est un frémissement, c'est peut-être une dynamique qui s'amorce. En tout cas, pour l'écosystème français, c'est prometteur. En ce qui concerne le Data Act, après quelques mois d'échanges et d'analyses, je suis heureuse de vous annoncer que nous allons lancer d'ici peu une grande consultation publique dans laquelle nous présenterons d'une part ce que nous avons perçu des dynamiques du marché du cloud et d'autre part nos ambitions pour participer à l'ouverture de ce marché. Nous souhaitons que les données des entreprises ne soient plus enfermées dans des serveurs de 2 ou 3 grands acteurs. Nous souhaitons apporter une plus grande liberté de choix aux entreprises. Nous ne pouvons pas, ou nous ne devons pas, devrais-je dire, nous résoudre à ce que les entreprises souhaitant innover en France et en Europe n'aient pas vraiment de choix quand il s'agit d'accéder à des serveurs ou à de la puissance de calcul et par exemple pour entraîner des nouveaux modèles d'intelligence artificielle. C'est une question économique, bien évidemment, ce n'est pas qu'une question économique, tout le monde en est bien conscient. Nous comptons en particulier sur le monde académique et le tissu économique pour nous éclairer, nous aider dans notre travail de régulateur en répondant à cette consultation. C'est un appel à contribution. Entreprises utilisatrices, grands acteurs et challengers du cloud, entreprises de services numériques, ceux qui conseillent les clients, les entreprises utilisatrices, cabinets d'avocats. Nous vous invitons à y répondre et sommes à votre écoute. Au-delà de la mise en œuvre des textes réglementaires qui donnent un cadre utile, c'est bien la dynamique, la posture et l'ambition qui comptent. L'objectif est de contribuer à créer le marché unique de la donnée en Europe. Parmi les enjeux que nous appréhendons à la fois avec humilité, parce que c'est un domaine à la fois technique, juridique, économique, compliqué, relativement nouveau. Donc, il faut avancer avec humilité, mais sérénité aussi, parce qu'on a aussi un ADN, une culture et des compétences en matière de régulation technico-économique ex ante qui sont bien là depuis maintenant 25 ans. Donc, il y a dans les enjeux donc, que nous appréhendons, il y a celui de l'articulation des cadres de régulation. C'est une question qui se pose régulièrement à nous, entre naturellement les responsabilités de chacun des régulateurs sur chacun des textes qui touchent de près ou de loin le numérique. Alors oui, nous articulons déjà nos travaux avec les autres régulateurs français, à la fois en bilatéral, comme c'est d'ailleurs prévu dans certains textes, alors notamment avec la CNIL pour l'articulation avec le RGPD dans le cadre de la transposition du Data Governance Act, et la question des données personnelles. Et oui, cette articulation entre régulateurs français sera renforcée au sein de l'enceinte multilatérale que sera le réseau des régulateurs voulu par la loi SREN. Je pense que ça sera une des missions dont s'emparera le futur ministre du numérique quand il sera nommé. Plus que jamais, nous avons besoin de coopérer sur les enjeux numériques, et nous le faisons d'ailleurs déjà, que ce soit au travers du pôle commun qui existe entre l'Arcep et l'Arcom. Dans les cadres des avis croisés avec l'autorité de la concurrence, ou encore des travaux avec la CNIL, presque au quotidien maintenant du fait de nos nouvelles missions, pour bénéficier de leur expertise en matière de données personnelles. Et puis nous le faisons aussi entre présidents, en discutant, en s'appelant, en échangeant des informations de façon très informelle, sans que c'est besoin d'être écrit aussi dans un texte de loi et sans que c'est besoin d'être hyper normé. Finalement, quelquefois, quand il y a une dynamique qui est enclenchée, c'est très utile de pouvoir échanger. Et oui, nous articulons aussi nos travaux avec les autres régulateurs en Europe, comme je l'ai dit, notamment par l'enceinte qui a été créée, le Comité européen de l'innovation en matière de données. Ce réseau est déjà mobilisé, il y a déjà plusieurs sous-groupes de travail. L'Arcep et la CNIL y sont très actifs, tout ça dans l'objectif de créer une harmonisation européenne, et c'est d'ailleurs indispensable. Voilà donc quelques pistes qui dessinent une démarche de régulateur au service de cette grande politique publique. Il s'agit vraiment d'un nouveau domaine de régulation. Et avec notre culture de régulateur ex-ante, nous avançons en travaillant en amont avec l'ensemble des parties prenantes, l'ensemble des acteurs et des partenaires. Nous savons aussi que nous ne sommes pas seuls, que comme pour la régulation historique que sont les télécoms, nous avons besoin d'éclairage pour affiner nos pratiques de régulation, éclairage du monde académique. Je voudrais naturellement saluer les chercheurs ici de la chaire régulation et les travaux de thèse qui sont sur ces sujets. C'est très utile, sont précieux notamment pour identifier les facteurs clés de succès, les limites des démarches, les effets de bord. Éclairage des acteurs économiques, bien sûr, qui sont confrontés à la réalité du terrain, les prestataires de services d'intermédiation de données, ainsi que les entreprises utilisatrices. Et je les vois largement représentées ce matin, donc c'est bien pour ces travaux. Éclairage de nos camarades européens, grâce aux échanges réguliers avec eux, et éclairage de la société civile aussi, car c'est toujours utile. Finalement, l'enjeu principal de la mise en œuvre de ce cadre est sans doute là. Après 2 décennies de régulation sectorielle, souvent liée à des infrastructures bien physiques et essentielles, il nous faut aujourd'hui agir sur des objets beaucoup plus immatériels, transsectoriels, circulant non seulement dans l'Union européenne, mais dans le monde. Et cela nous oblige à agir de concert entre régulateurs au sein de l'Union européenne. À l'Arcep, nous pensons que les réseaux, c'est dans notre manifeste, nous pensons que les réseaux doivent rester des biens communs, des infrastructures de liberté, quel que soit leur régime de propriété. J'aimerais vous proposer en conclusion que nous œuvrions ensemble à ce que les données, elles aussi, deviennent et restent en Europe un bien commun, une infrastructure immatérielle de liberté. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Laure, pour ces propos introductifs qui vont sans aucun doute éclairer nos débats et contribuer d'une manière plus générale au débat et aux réflexions sur la construction concrète de la régulation de ces espaces de données et surtout la construction des espaces de partage de données en Europe. Back to English and introduce briefly the 2 first roundtables. Because those 2 roundtables are partly driven by a study that has been started a year and a half ago, 18 months ago, a study in cooperation between Gaia-X, and I mentioned Gaia-X in general, not only the Gaia-X Institute, because this is a study that join together academics, so from the Gaia-X Institute, but also various stakeholders of the development of data sharing ecosystem in Europe. So stakeholders from the industry, stakeholders from the orchestration world, and of course stakeholders from the government and the regulatory bodies. This study is based on case studies, in-depth case studies. A first set of case studies was developed essentially between Lucas, who will introduce those studies today, and with a PhD student at the chair, and Bert Verdonk, who basically managed a first set of case study last year that was trying to better understand the technical, strategic, and regulatory challenges framing the development of economics of data space. And today, Lucas will present the development of those case studies, trying to focusing now on the dynamic of development of data sharing ecosystems. Insisting both on the dynamic of development of the relationship among stakeholders and how they develop in cooperation use case, and this will be the focus on the first roundtable. And as mentioned before, the second roundtable will be about the role of orchestrators in the development of those dynamics. This, as I mentioned before, this study is made in close cooperation with the industry and with Gaia-X in general, and we benefit from the advices and the experience and the expertise of the list of people that is on this slide, and who help us to identify use case, interesting use case to be studied, but also who basically react to your analysis of those use case. And we have a close cooperation with the corporations that are pointed out here, but in fact we have a larger cooperation with the stakeholders in the case studies we are studying. As I mentioned before, the aim of this study is to try to better understand the dynamics of the development of ecosystem. And as Laure mentioned before, we try to, derive lessons, to draw analysis from the existing case studies. I will be very short, but I just want to point out the general spirit in which we are working, and basically which is the outcome, in a sense, of our many interviews with the industry, but also of our analysis of the literature, but also on our analysis of previous movement of datification, of algorithmization. Typically, for instance, we can think of the development of EDI systems in the 1990s. The technology was quite different, but the logic was also to try to automate and develop innovative way of coordinating within value chains. And in fact, data sharing should not be considered only as the development of data markets, to make it short, okay? Where basically you should support the development of demand and the supply of data. In fact, what is going on is the development of services that we can try to call at this point automation analytical services that are enabling the stakeholders to create value in different ways, simply cutting some costs or reducing some delays in coordination, but also thanks to especially those analytical capabilities to develop new types of services that are benefiting to the end users in the value chain or to the stakeholders in the value chain to develop new services that are basically addressed to new demands, new type of partners in other industries. And so then, what does it mean? It means that the development of data sharing ecosystem is a process of innovation, should be understood as a process of innovation. So a process of innovation implies that you have delays, that you take risk, that you need then to test some prototypes with users, and the feedback of users are very important because they contribute to the development and to the reshaping of the characteristic of the service, of the innovation. Then, of course, those systems make sense only if they upscale and they are adopted by most of the participants in the value chain, and so then the dynamic of adoption is crucial. And when those systems are working, in fact, there is a process by which I will call it simply, there is a process of learning by using that allows, in fact, to identify new use of those analytics, of those data, etc. So there is a permanent development of new features in those systems. And that's why we would like to better understand how, in fact, in some ecosystem, in some value chains, the stakeholders decide to develop some use case, why they focus on some use case on others. We want to understand the overall strategy behind that. And also we'll insist on the second roundtable on the key role of orchestrators in the building of those ecosystems. They play a technical role, they play a strategic role, they are there also to try or to develop trust among the stakeholders, because the stakeholders, their interest, their priority are not spontaneously aligned, and this is a very important point. And so it goes far beyond the simple securitization of data manipulation. And this is why we decided to dedicate 2 roundtables to this dynamic of emergence of data ecosystem. So as I mentioned, that we have been managing those case studies, and Lucas Eustache is the pillar of this process, and he will introduce both roundtables. So the first one on the dynamic of ecosystem developments, and the second one on the role of orchestrators. Okay, so I give him immediately the floor to start to introduce the first roundtable, and then I will give the floor to the various and introduce them, of course, to the various participants to the first roundtable.
Thank you, Eric, for this nice introduction. So, as he mentioned, I will open this first roundtable about the economics of data sharing through the prism of data sharing ecosystem. And why? Because the first statement that I want to make is data sharing ecosystem is maybe the most promising avenue for fostering value creation thanks to data flow. If you try to understand data sharing, it's a bit complex topic. One way to capture the complexity of it is to see it, as Eric mentioned, as an innovation process. Why is that? Innovation because in fact it allows you to capture a wide range of benefit until innovation and reorganization of the value chain. The process means that this is not a simple and one-shot transaction. It means a collaborative approach between people that need to communicate, to set up use cases, and to develop together new services and or to optimize the existing services. And this implies another key element. Data sharing is a strategic process, in a sense that the more integrated that you will be, the more data that you will share, and the more important data that you will share, the more strategic it is. This is not trivial to share, for instance, R&D data, and then those strategic things need to be taken into account. So, as I mentioned before, and I will go more in detail later on, the gain from data sharing can be really wide. You have different way of making value thanks to data sharing until innovation. And everything within the data sharing ecosystem is in a sense linked together, and the use cases is what tie together, what tie everything together. If we first begin by defining properly what is a data sharing ecosystem, one can see it as a club that has a aim to unite diverse stakeholders together in order to make bilateral or multilateral relationship in order to create use cases. What is important there, data sharing ecosystems are not just data marketplace. This is not about matching a supply and demand. It's about incentivizing provider to join the ecosystem and to help users to locate the provider and providing them with the essential guarantee to make data sharing happen, meaning confidentiality, security, compliance, and credential, for instance. And here is the pure added value of a data sharing ecosystem. The value added rely on the ability to make the data sharing happen, and also to provide the technical tools that are needed in order the sharing to happen. So as I mentioned before, the participant and then the data sharing ecosystem and the use case, the orchestrator and every element of it are interdependent, and what is tying them, it's the use cases. We can see the use cases as a specific application or solution that leverages data technology to address a particular problem or need within one of various value chains. As I mentioned, the benefit range for use cases can be really wide. You can go for traditional optimization that we know, to innovation and to navigate into uncertainty, developing new product, to a total reorganization of the value chain. But to achieve those level of benefit, different conditions are required. First of all, it's costly. I mean, you will need to integrate and then to rethink every of your process. So it's costly for the firm and for the participant that joins the ecosystem. And the second element also is it had to be gradual. Data sharing ecosystem will not behave the same with a participant that has a low, I would say, data maturity, and with a participant that is already really mature in those topics and that knows how to deal with those things. And this is, I would say, building the table. But then once you build the table, you need to bring everyone at the same table to discuss and to share data. So the data sharing ecosystem also have to adopt a strategic approach in order to incentivize everyone to join the table and to be able to share data. If you focus on the wide range of benefit that I was mentioning before, we can notice that there is 4 levels of benefit. The first one is the simplest, is the digitalization of data exchange. You will go from paper to data, and then you will have some benefit, which are you will reduce the exchange cost, for instance, you have a better information conformity and so on. But it will come with a cost, the cost of modifying your data collection process. You need to digitalize the information. Once you did that, you can bring algorithm in it. and start to do some automation. You will for sure benefit from efficiency gain and also from lower error and better information conformity. It also implies a cost. The worker needs to be used to use those software, and then you need to sync your process. But at the end, you will have efficiency gain. And what is important, and it relies on the logic of innovation of data sharing ecosystem, is like the gain that you will make will allow you to reorganize the value chain. You will free some resources and some time, and then you can think of a new organization of your processes. And you will benefit also from in-depth management. But at this point, you start to see a risk. The risk is you will rely more and more on the data sharing ecosystem for your process of production and for the way that you organize your firm. And if you succeed to do that, it could be also outside of the ecosystem or within the ecosystem. I mean, it's sequential. You can reach the last level, which is a more complex one, which is about innovation. And then it's totally uncertain. You can develop new product, you can develop new way of producing what you're already doing, and you will have the cost of marketing and the development of new product, R&D cost. And it implies also a second risk, because when you come at this level, then the data that you will share and the integration within the data sharing ecosystem are more and more strategic for a firm. And it brings me to the last point of this presentation, is at a given level of integration, there is one element that is necessary to make everything works, is trust. J'ai plus de slide. That's not a problem, I think. Trust is a key element that perfect. Trust is a key element that everyone mentioned during our interviews and during our case study. In fact, we really try to define what people think when they are talking about trust. And we took a restrictive approach, maybe a bit provocative, but in fact, this is not about trust. This is about risk mitigation. And we can isolate two types of risk. The first risk is a technological risk. For instance, if you start to share R&D data with your orchestrator, with the data sharing ecosystem, you know that you have some contractual clauses that forbid the orchestrator or people in charge of the technical coordination to access those data, but it remains one question: what if he does it? And this what if is like the origin of this technological risk. The second risk is the one related to the opportunistic behavior of the orchestrator. Since the beginning of my presentation, I'm talking about integration. And when you are integrated into a data sharing ecosystem, you will try to develop specific assets. And those assets are the ones that you can use within the data sharing ecosystem, but you can't use outside of the data sharing ecosystem. And someone like the orchestrator can benefit from this lock-in effect to extract more and more value from you. And then you will start to be dependent of him. So, as you can see, those risks rely on the integration of the participant within the data sharing ecosystem and the sensitivity, in a sense, of the data that are shared through this data sharing ecosystem. So at some point, the participant will only join the initiative if and only if the benefit that they can extract from the data sharing ecosystem outweigh those risks. And he can advocate in favor of different solutions that will be discussed today. I mean, the technical solution. You can think about trust by design, and it will be one topic of the roundtable of this afternoon. And then there is other question relying on the business model of the orchestrator and the business model, generally speaking, on the data sharing ecosystem, which will be the point of the next roundtable. But now I'm just letting the panelists for this first roundtable. Thank you.
So basically what Lucas did is that introduce a kind of general visions. This is also what I did, but now we have to dig deeper into the economics and dynamic of each ecosystem, because one of the outcome of the conference and the studies that we performed last year is that the dynamic and the challenge in developing data sharing ecosystem is pretty much depending upon the the structure of the value chain or the structure of the industry, whether you have large players, dominant players, or whether you have a collection of independent players, small players, etc. Also, it depends of the identity of those large players. It depends of the balance of among those the players in the value chain, etc., etc. So, in fact, of course, we can try to draw general lessons when analyzing the dynamics of data sharing ecosystem, but also this is very important to consider the specific situation, the specific challenge facing different industries, different value chains, and sometimes the interplay between complementary value chains. So this is why we decided to benefit from the expertise of various players in very different industries and value chains. So we will start by a presentation of what's going on in the aerospace industry with Frederic Sutter from Skywise. Then we'll have the pleasure to better understand what's going on in the tourism and transportation industry with Catena-X that will be discussed by Pierrick Le Masne. Then we'll switch to a totally different industry, the agro and agri industry. And Thierry Desforges will speak about the initiatives in those industries, and in particular the initiative carried out around the ag data hub ecosystem, but there are, which basically is not only a French initiative, but which is developing in cooperation with other European initiatives. And then we'll have the pleasure to benefit from a vision of what's going on in the automotive industry with Catena-X that will be presented by Oliver Ganser with online. So, as I mentioned before, each of the speakers will have 10 minutes to present his vision of the development of data sharing ecosystem in its value chain, in the specific case of its value chain. And then I will let the different speakers around the table to comment on the others' case. And of course, the floor will be open to most of the speakers and to the audience. And we'll end up this roundtable right on time for a coffee break.
Thank you.
Frederic, you have the floor.
Thank you, and I apologize because I will have to take my flight at noon, so I will leave pretty sharp after the first roundtable, so I apologize. Yes, creating supply chain and operations resilience through data. This was a key starting point of Skywise. So Skywise is not a legal entity. Skywise is not even a separate organization. Skywise is a brand, an official brand of Airbus. And this brand helped to at least create a community among an ecosystem of sharing and collaborating around data. It started, let me start with some key figures. What is Airbus? We are an integrator. So we basically, when we sell an aircraft, about 80% of the value of the aircraft is coming from our supply chain. We are an integrator of aerostructure, systems, cabin, components, engines, and this supply chain is damnly large and complex. We have about 7,200 suppliers only for the flying parts. Every day in Airbus plant, we receive between 1.5 and 2 million parts, and this has to enter a complex flow of producing the aircraft. And of course, safety, quality, integrity, compliance, and security are vital for our business. We cannot afford any failure along all these processes. Some key figures in 2023, and just to balance that compared to what Oliver may explain later on the automotive industry. So Airbus, in 2023, we delivered 735 aircraft. It's very small series, low figures. However, the complexity and the pace to achieve these delivery figures is really at constraints every day. And this is very important to keep in mind. Of course, we have a very successful commercial. We recorded more than 2,300 gross orders last year. And we have an order book, end of 2023, of more than 8,500 aircraft. So you may say, wow, what a great industry, what a good position. But in fact, it is not that shiny because we rely entirely on our supply chain. And access to data was also a key challenge, but the first challenge to access our data was an internal challenge because all those data were locked in our internal applications and silos. So when we launched Skywise in 2015, it's in order to play a vital role in driving different areas of business to create value. Value in terms of efficiencies in our production, in our supply chain, but also value in the way our aircraft are operated by our customers. And we have been using data and digitalization as a key enabler also to ensure quality and on-time delivery. But the key principles, as mentioned by Lucas, is we need to have trust, even within our internal teams, to have trust on the quality of the data in order to drive decision. Trust also in the value we may create through data transparency and the access to good data. And at the time of Skywise starting, we were without any data governance or data officer network inside our organization. So the only individual, and sometimes we were relying on the subcontractor in order to assess whether this data was of good quality or not. Since then, we learned and we implement a strong network of data officers internally to qualify the data and to provide the SLA related to the source of the data from which we were extracting the data to take decisions. And we made a step-by-step approach. We started with data visualization, starting with some simple dashboards. Then we enter into more complex data analytics. And now we can rely on this data lake in order to create some artificial intelligence scenarios in order to support our internal processes, again, be they on HR, be they on business planning robustness, be they in our ways to support our customers with their maintenance operations. So we were creating a robust data foundation, and I will give you a couple of examples on how we operated. The first one is on problem solving in operations. And I agree with also the comment from Lucas. So data collaboration only works if there is a business challenge to be addressed collectively. And this is the starting point. So in our case, we were using data and analytics to monitor, report, root cause analysis, and quality of planning in order to also monitor our suppliers. By using data access and these analytics, we reduced operational risk. We managed to stick to the planned quality and planned delivery dates through quality management at supply chain level, and also monitor the on-time delivery of these suppliers. Also, in the case of crises such as COVID, you can imagine the massive impact it had on our operations, on our people as well. in order to keep this focus on safety and quality in a time where we were stopping almost all of the operations. So keeping analytics in order to support a flow of production in these tough times were also very important, especially when it was about monitoring the stock management at every plant we were operating. So it allowed us to replan aircraft deliveries, change production rate, swap parts of products that were normally very customized. All of that was built on effective data coming out of our internal system and out of our supply chain. Value creation were done through reduction of deviations from the reference. So it was cost avoidance. And this is also the key value of our data platform that we implemented is really to save cost in the way we process. But also more robust forecasting and planning, meaning when we commit with a customer on a delivery date, data and analytics over the flow of our production line is essential in order to reduce the risk and avoid penalties. And then faster deviation recovery. We have hiccup in our production line every day, and every day our quality engineers, our planners, they have to take decisions. And in order to take those decisions, they need to rely on also a strong array of data of quality. I will go through in this second example, but very quickly. But this is an example where, in also tough time, having an instrument such as Skywise, to collect massive amount of data, and not then only internal data, because there we were taking into account data coming from the health organization across the world. We were having also all the border restrictions documented that we gathered from public sectors. We were also monitoring carefully after the crisis the recovery of the travel, recovery of the demand from our customer, but also recovery of our aircraft that were grounded into operations. And from that, we advise also not only our customers, we were also advising the institutions like Eurocontrol for the traffic management in order to share our scenarios and then build up our production ramp up again in the best way. Here also, starting to leverage data and having an instrument in order to collect data, to manipulate them and create value out of them were essential. And we were having some comments that from our corporate affairs colleagues saying that Back to Travel, the application we developed, is a fantastic application developed in a record time by reactive teams and so on, which makes you realize the magnificent strengths of real-time access to data. And I think this is also an interesting feedback. It's not only to discover that there is a potential challenge and then we need to put in place a lot of infrastructure. Having an instrument where we can collaborate in an open ecosystem to share data in a trusted way is something very, very powerful for any organization in order to react and take appropriate decisions. The third example is on the compliance towards supply chain to sustainability regulation in a changing environment. And this is one of the key vital objectives of Airbus is to decarbonize the aviation industry. This example comes on banned substance follow-up. Today, a large amount of our aircraft parts are supplied, and some of them may contain substances that are banned or will be banned in the future. So this is the supplier duty to be compliant to regulation. However, it is our responsibility to check and to report that this is effectively applied. And therefore, such an application helps us to mitigate the risk of business disruption due to a supplier using banned substance, just simply as that. And therefore, we need to then, in turn, continuously strive the improvement of our supply chain, make sure that when there is a non-compliance due to banned substance in the supply chain, we inform upfront the Tier N supplier about the non-compliance of the Tier N+1. So therefore, this is really a great application. And the specificity of our sector are that we have products that take several months to be integrated. So the lead time in order to react is also very important, because once the regulation is there, then it immediately applies, as opposed to our parts are already there for months, if not years. And our aircraft, you know, they operate several decades. And if we take just the A320 that all of you may know, it is in production since more than 35 years. So therefore, it's important to anticipate. And for that, having a tool that captures the supply chain data and connected to our internal system is critical. So where do we stand? And this is my last slide. So we have more than 42,000 users on Skywise. But out of them, we have about 40, or less than 40, but we have around 40,000 Airbus users. So the vast majority of the value comes out of Airbus internal usage. We have about 4,000 airline users that also use Skywise in order to leverage the power of a shared ecosystem in order to improve their troubleshooting, maintenance tasks, and also support their decision in flight operations. We have more than 11,000 aircraft connected, be the Airbus or Boeing data. And this is important because we have a system that prevents any Airbus engineers to access Boeing data, and this is fundamental. But today, this very strong success is not sufficient. And what we need to move forward? Today, we are very successful on the downstream segment. So we connect our airlines, our customers. However, we are a bit weak in our supply chain. The reason is our suppliers, they work for many different industries. And we need to have open standards in order to, for any suppliers being able to share data across several industries. And this is the essence of Gaia-X architecture framework. We need also a trust framework across industries also, in order not to have a centralized ecosystem like the one I just displayed with Skywise. It is a purely centralized ecosystem. We need a decentralized ecosystem, but for that, we need a trust framework where all our engineers can rely on when there is a data coming from a party. Is sure this is non-polluted data, and this is a key element. And we need also, in terms of infrastructure, to have an harmonization of the infrastructure and the security or sovereignty rules across European countries. And as you may know, we are a strong advocate of EUCS High Plus level, which is today still not the case. However, we have, with Gaia-X compliance document, we have the Gaia-X level 3, and we already announced that any upcoming RFP for sovereign cloud will rely on this Gaia-X level 3, because for us, it is critical that when we share data, especially as some of those data are export control regulated, are dual use between commercial and military, it's essential that the underlying sovereign criteria in Europe are harmonized, or at least get harmonized across a trust framework and a compliance document. So, and this is what we do with Decade-X data sharing ecosystem for aviation that we want to create, and that may feed Skywise. However, we need this data space based on Gaia-X compliance document and trust framework. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I immediately give the floor to Pierrick Le Masne for EONA-X.
So no support, no marvelous photo, just words, at the old word. So what is EONA-X? It's a strange animal because inside you have finally many different sectors. Transportation is not exactly the same than hospitality, than ski station, tourism office. So first point is we try to put together some people working for perhaps the same guest, but not with the same way of working. So we have, some of us are very big, we'll say global people like Air France, little bit like us, and some others are very small. When you are working for a park somewhere in France, perhaps with 100,000 clients, you are very small, in fact. So you don't have the same way to use your data. You don't really know your data. You don't have the cloud system. You don't have a CTO. You don't have many, many people behind. So it's some words. We have to work together, but our spirit is completely different. So the only way to make any progress, obviously, is to work by a use case. So it's a sort of magic word, use case. But what is it exactly? The difficulty is you could have some people coming from the same, I will say, culture, like IT, but that's not the point. You need to put some business partner together. And here, the difference is you cannot imagine, because the same word doesn't mean the same things in some sectors. Or some elements are very obvious for you, but for your colleagues, they don't understand what you are saying. You don't have the same acronym. So it's not only a question of trust, it's a question of what does it mean? You have something to me, but I don't understand what exactly. So we spend a lot of time on that. I will give you just one example of a success, I will say, which is a use case on Olympic Games. So what is it? We just try to optimize the flow of delegation. So the point was to exchange data, explaining where is the delegation, where is going the delegation, and what do they need on the step after. What was the interest for Aéroport de Paris? A little bit to accelerate the flows, but compared to the volume for Aéroport de Paris, the benefit was very small. What was the benefit for the hotel? Frankly, not a big one. We just know a little bit how many luggages are coming in one day, but it was not a key information for us. For transportation, a little bit, because they know what they have to put their taxi or their buses to catch the people. But for the delegation, the benefit was huge because they spend less time. There was, if I may, they considered that the welcome in Paris was a little bit higher than in London because we managed better the flow. The other one was very interesting, was the Ministry of Home Affairs, the Minister of Interior. Why? Because he was a little bit afraid of all this delegation, and know where was the delegation was a very positive point for him. So when we say it's not an economy of data, what is true, in fact, is economy through data. I love this expression of Laure, because through our data, the exchange of data, we better do our own job, our own reason why. So it takes time. Second point on use case, I'm very impressed by the majority of them are coming from forecasting questions. We exchange data to better forecast our activities, in fact. At this stage, it could move, but at this stage, it's mainly around forecasting. And not, I will say, a very far away forecasting, but question for the coming day or the next week, which is the most difficult one. For example, if you know that your hotel will be completely full, you don't have the same organization if you only have an occupation rate of 25%, for example. So the question of forecasting and organization is a key one. And also, we have some question about use case around, I will say, top-line topics. If you know that the guy is coming from Tokyo in Paris, you could imagine that you will have need an hotel. And so if you have the information, it could be helpful. And in one way, it could be better if you have it directly without using, for example, a guy like Google, which is very expensive, or other one. So the question of top line is completely different because the way to exchange data will be completely different. It's another point. So after that, as soon as you define the use case, of course, there is a question of technology. To be very simple, 3 cases, very simple, transfer one-to-one, transfer one-to-many, and tiers de confiance, trust third party. We understand, today we mainly test the first one, one-to-one and one-to-many. We are not open the topics today, but I'm pushing. Tiers de confiance, trust third party. Why? Because it will be the only way to exchange data around consumer, to be simple. And to respect GDPR legislations. And the question after that is, will be the incremental cost of the instant exchange. Today, for example, if you exchange data from what is coming in the next 3 months, it's a cold data for me. If you exchange data where the client is already inside your hotels, it's a very instant data, and it's probably this one that we are looking for. And so the question of incremental cost will be key. So in terms of business model, in one way, it's quite simple also. You have 2 business models. If you have a huge volume of data, and especially if they are very hot data, it will be a pay-as-you-go model, i.e. you pay per the usage. In one way, it's quite close to existing business model in digital platforms. But I think it will be not the most favorite one. I have the impression that a big part of the, I would say, business model will be based on most subscription model. Why? Because in fact, you could not isolate it very easily, the cost and or the benefit. For example, if I go back to my forecasting approach, a lot of use cases are based on forecasting. It's very difficult to say, okay, you have to pay €1 per data. There is no meaning behind that. So it will be a quite simple subscription model. And in this case, you could compare inside your value chain if the cost is acceptable or if it's not acceptable. So to summarize, my first element is to say, the key topic is clearly your use case. For the rest, at a very global view, I'm a strat guy, so perhaps sometimes a little bit too high, but what we observe is not so complex. The question is really to define, is it useful, my use case? And is it easy to have a good discussion with my colleagues in ski station, in office de tourism, and appreciate what will be the value. Often what's happened is, for me, the data is no more a value, but for him, it could be it. Question around tech and question around business model, for me, are not so difficult to go through. If we made some success, for example, I have, I will say, 5, 6, 7 use case with some efficiency, and we scale it. Do I go and see my CEO, Sébastien, and say, hey, guy, Sébastien, we have a huge success. Yes, I will do. And he will be very pleased because he was one of the first to push the idea 10 years ago of data sharing in tourism. But for him, it will be not information. in one way, he doesn't care. Why? Because he cannot explain what he's doing at board level. Why? Because the spirit of a board level in all global firm is you have to be specialized in one field. And if I'm trying to work with SNCF, if I'm trying to work with a ski station, I'm going somewhere else than to be a specialized guy. So, and it will be very difficult to my CEO to explain that to the board. We are, and is my position, a spirit position, by this way, we are trying to reinvent an approach of conglomerate. It was my life at the beginning of my business job, and they completely disappear. What was the benefit of a conglomerate? When you discuss with a guy working on another field, you have some idea that you don't have if you don't meet him. So, of course, we find, I will say, a value for the board, explaining that cycle portfolio will be useful. By this way, you will have always the same level of money. But fundamentally, it was an intangible asset. So the point with Laure de la Raudière was we are working on intangible assets, and we are looking for something around collaboration with a cost, and with the idea not to make some money through data, but to do better our job. That's a pure intangible asset. So we win, thanks to, for example, Joëlle, if we change the spirit on the board. So if they could understand on the very academic way what we are doing. So it's not only a question of business model, which is for me not the key issue, but to understand that in somewhere the specialization is not the future thanks to the data. That's all.
So I told you we have contrasted cases when we are speaking of data sharing ecosystem and data sharing issues in value chains, because the value chains are different. And this will be also illustrated by the third value chain, the one of agriculture. And Thierry Desforges, you have the floor for 10 minutes to introduce the way you see at FNSEA, but more generally in the French agro and agri value chain, how to build a data sharing ecosystem. But before all, what are the strategic stakes when building ecosystem, data sharing ecosystem?
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. I will try to speak English, but this is not my favorite occupation over the days, since I'm more on the tractor. But I will try to make my best. So, thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank Luca, because in introduction he said that it's a question of complex collaborative and strategic process. And in agriculture, with 400,000 farmers, not farms, and over 30 million of hectares, and over 50 supplies, we are effectively in this kind of approach of collaboration and collaborative approach. Saying that, I would like to insist on several topics that are driven our strategy. First of all, to pilot the use case detection and approach, we are looking at three domains, main domains. First is geopolitical purpose, because we are working in world demand and world application. So we are in this geopolitical approach, we are collecting data from, for example, I would like to take an example of John Deere. John Deere is a US enterprise, and John Deere is present in lots of farms and world farms. So when John Deere is collecting data in tractor in France and in Germany and in China and over the world, they are having a competitive advantage, large competitive advantage for US. So what that means? That means that if you have those data, if you have the data of weather and very good prediction weather models and breakstock data, that are the most advanced system of collecting data in France, for example. But when you coupled with a bit of IA, you are able to build the strategy and to be very, very performant as government, for example, to be strong in the world context. So that's why we need to use those data in France or in Europe, and that's why we are building those European consortium of data to be stronger and to predict and to interact at short term in agriculture because of international context, pandemics, weather market, and so on, and at long term because of stability in the world of climate, food demand, planification, investment, public policy, and so on. So this geopolitical purpose is driven a lot of use case. But that's not all. Let's talk about economics. This topic includes technical and management at farms level. Let's say to perform in farms, actually, you need to improve your techniques and acknowledgement or knowledge of your system. And first of all, and that's a use case which is very good performing in France, which is genetic. Why? Because to be very efficient in genetic, the more you have data, the more you are able to share data, the more you are working fastly. And the more you are creating value. So that's true in animal for a long time, but in vegetal, and it's more question of regulation, because you know, as most of you should know, for example, if you take the sugar beet supply, that a few years ago we have been on a retiré the use of neonicotinoids. Removed, thank you. the use of neonicotinoid at European level. But what that means? That means that Ukraine, Russia, and all the countries still continue to produce sugar beets with neonicotinoid. So they are very performant and very competitive on this market. So we need to find solution very quickly. The best way that we have found is genetic. So, and if we don't have a use case this has been very interesting use case because we have trying to put a lot of data in the system to find very quickly new variety which are using this genetic approach to answer a topic which is the puceron jaunisse nanisante, voilà, puceron, which is so this is disease, but this is disease who can cause 80% of lost in the field. So this is not only only a joke. This is also an economic problem that should be addressed. So this is a kind of use case, but it's very interesting to about this. The sharing of data and the use case should help farmers to make decisions, to have better decision process on the farms, but also to create models and to help to educate the farmers also. Because yes, no, that's good. So this is quite complex because I would like to thank my neighbor to address this point few minutes ago, that you don't have in the 400,000 farms, you don't have any CTO. That's right. That's true. And you don't have a senior VP of data, and you don't have or you have in each farm this kind of profile, but it's not the best to analyze, to make a decision on that point. So it's very complicated. And to give an example, you have still a lot of farms who don't know that they are producing data. So how can you help them to use those data to make their decision process better? So this is very important. And I switch to the last point, which is sociology. In sociology, let's say that we have 40% of farmers which will be retired in 10 years. I'm talking about France, but I think that it's the same in Europe, and it's the same in the most of world countries. So we need to prepare this. We need to connect the stakeholders. We need to adapt the training process. We need to promote the recruitment. And for that purpose, we need to have the best solution and the best, this is use case to address this problem of generational renewal. So, and the last point in sociology is to connect farmers and consumers. Because we are talking about trust, this is a key point, for example, for data, to reassure the farmers that their data will not serve to promote the value creation over the farm, but we need to use value creation and to put this value creation in the farm. This is key to have competitive farming, competitive agriculture. And we need to reassure the consumer that the product from the farm is good, and especially in France, which is the best, the more efficient agriculture in the world from environmental purpose, for example, and lots of points. And I will conclude on that point, that the agriculture management has been driven by yield and yield optimization for a while. actually, we can see that because of the climate, mainly for the climate, but also for instability of the world, we need to change. And I was talking with some colleagues last week and the last month about to come back to low-tech production systems. Why? Because when you have lots of variation of revenue and competition, you need to cut the cost. And actually, the cost has been driven by technology only since the last 20 years. So we need, why I say that? Because especially in those kinds of system, we need to be collaborative, but efficient, giving back the revenue, the value to the farm, and cut the cost. So, that's all.
So now I hope that we'll be able to benefit from Oliver Ganser's presentation. Oliver is online. This is an example of another industry that is facing major global strategic challenges, but also the challenge of a major transition linked to the stakes of climate change and mitigating climate change, switching an industry who is switching from one model to another with the development of electric vehicles. So, Oliver, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Eric. Thank you very much for the invitation. And Hubert, thank you very much for linking us back together again, since we all were here last year. And as I think some of my previous speakers already mentioned, it's all about, do we really understand what the customer needs and who's our customer? And I think the farming example is an excellent one, because as you said, revenue is very volatile, and you want at the end some profit with the farmer and not just with people who want to sell them something. So Eric, if you don't mind sharing my presentation. I think just that everybody is in line that what we do in the automotive industry, because we have so many industries now sharing. Are you sharing, Eric?
Not yet. I think they are working on it.
Okay, but then let's bridge the gap.
Yeah.
So easy enough. Everybody of you knows what a car is. Most of you even hopefully have an automobile. However, to build a car, most of our value chains to build a car are across the world. It's not local for local. It's not German for German OEMs, or it's not French suppliers for French OEMs. It is always a very global value chain with multiple tier steps. And those multiple tier steps is exactly the challenge what we as a data space have to tackle, since we produce billions of parts every single day to produce cars. And those billions of parts, they come from start of a mining company sometimes, and they go up to 5 to 7 to 8 tier levels that we have to connect. So our data space is a vertical integration of a supply chain, for example, to replicate the products that are used in the car, where they're coming from, how they are produced, what's the supply performance, can I produce, can I not produce, and where do they go in order to, what is the CO2 footprint? And this vertical integration has 2 challenges or 3 challenges. The first challenge is a very simple one. There is no offering right now at the table that has multi-tier collaboration. If I want to have a freedom of choice, what software I use. It's easy to say I have an application. If everybody uses this very same application across the entire chain, then it might work. It doesn't work. We need the freedom of choice to integrate those people and those organizations, that they have a freedom of choice what solution they want, what fits them best, and that we speak the same language. We do not have this for most of our business collaborations right now. We have a peer-to-peer collaboration, but it's not multi-tier. And that is the key benefit, what we need for data sharing in the next level, what Catena is striving for. The second point is it has to be scalable on a global element. As I mentioned before, it is not something what we need in Europe. It is something, our value chains are global, our production sites are global, and we need data exchange cross-border within Europe and across Europe, with China, with Japan, with South America, with North America, with Africa. Those value chains are going once around the world or twice in order to build car. And the last one is we need digital twins from a semantic model that we can reuse. If we build for one use case a data space, it's not going to work. We have to be sure and also to build a data ecosystem to promote data sharing, that once I have a data asset, a digital twin, that parts of that I can reuse in the next use case. In order, exactly as the colleagues from AG Data Hub said, you have to cut costs. So reuse of artifacts of connectors, reuse of digital twins, reuse of logins is something to bring down costs and speed up time to value to promote more data sharing. For us at Catena, and I'm sorry that you cannot follow the slides now, but
Oliver, if you, for the slide, we have a problem here with your slides, so if you can share your screen, it will be perfect, but I don't know if they are on
Unfortunately, I do not, I have not. So I try to make it visual, so if I'm too long.
Thank you.
So the point is, those three things: multi-tier exchange, global scalability, and reuse of data assets and digital twins are the key elements for us to promote data sharing. At Catena, for the automotive industry, what we did was to create a system like we build, we operate, and we govern. Those three pillars are key. Why? Because it supports integration of partners. It's not just one company who can build, many companies can build in open source. And under Eclipse, we are by far, as Catena, we are super proud, the strongest open source community with contributions. The governance perspective, it is important that it's not owned. To promote data sharing, you need trust, and trust is given by industry governance. That is a key element within Catena, what we learned. If it's owned or controlled by only a few, one market, by one organization, by one entity, it will fail. That's why we have an industry governance with OEMs, first tiers from local, international partners, outfitters, small, medium enterprises, and large organizations. And we have collaborations with Chinese partners from NGO, with the Automotive Association in the US. We have strong collaborations in order to gain trust. It's not mine, it's not yours, it's ours. And the governance has to scale globally. Otherwise, for us, it's not possible. What we use for trust is, however, not just an industry governance. We use for trust three other elements. For the open source development, we use Eclipse, that it's really open source. That's key. How we develop, that everybody has a potential and a right to contribute and commit, that's key. The second governance we use for the connector is the IDSA. And the third one we use for trusted identities is Skywise. Right? We use a clearinghouse, we use the self-description elements to have identity. Trusted identities is a key element in a digital world, and with artificial intelligence going forward, that will be a lot more to come, what we will see. But we use so far the digital identities from Gaia. However, also to be clear, we have to make sure that digital identities scale globally. A Chinese partner is unlikely to use a European trust body. A Japanese partner is unlikely to use an American trust body. Trust and identities is of national interest, and we have to make sure that we are compatible around the world and that we can trust each other with digital identities. And that's key to promote global adoption. Now, the question is Catena working with that foundation? Right? We have multi-tier, we have global targets, and we have the reuse. We have our frameworks, policies, and standards. And we have trusted governance or trusted governance bodies. The element or the question is, how does it scale? It's pretty simple, actually. You need, as AG Data Hub also mentioned, low entry barriers. So we have applications, certified applications for Catena out there now, who give an easy access for $29.99 a month, that you can join the data space with an EDC as a service, with your wallet, and with simple data exchange for the first semantic models or use cases that you can change. Companies bring solutions for $29.95 a month. I don't want to be selling mode, but I would really like to hone in what my previous speaker said. It's important to have a low entry barrier. It cannot cost thousands of dollars a month or initial implementation costs. The second point is you have to have active promoters in the data economy world that use an OEM, use first tier says, I believe in it, and I activate my personal network. It is not, in my opinion, smart to say, I go to the data space and we'll see what happens. You have to always bring your business partner because data sharing is something what you do as a team. So what we do in our industry, we always have teams of 2 to 3 who have a mutual business relationship. We commit to, we would like to this component or this business process we'd like to transfer within Catena. Are you in partner A or B? Then let's do this together. And then let's promote it also at the end together, what worked. And if it didn't work, what were the obstacles that we do better the next time? And this, we see promotions from Volkswagen, we see promotions from ZF, we see promotions from BMW, from Bosch, who all now go on LinkedIn and speak about, I did it, it works, and I will continue. And this is a key element that you promote data sharing, that you have initial promoters who use their existing physical goods supply and make it a digital twin out of it within Catena and talk about that it helped. And then the next one is, hey, I did it now for one use case. I did it now for one component. I can reuse the elements and build further use cases with less time to value, time to market, with higher time to value and less cost. And then you have cross benefits, not just for one use case, but for the entire ecosystem. And then scalability is really something to work on. That was my quick introduction, that Catena is pretty much alive and we're scaling on a well-good basis globally.
Yeah, thank you, Oliver, for this case that illustrates well the point that we are witnessing the development of collaborative system of innovation, and that's what it is about, not only about sharing data. Does any of the panelists want to react to each other presentation before I open the floor to the room?
Perhaps two reactions. First, the question of the referential, Catena mentioned it. So we use some word more complex than referential. But the point is, if you don't define the table able to exchange between two enterprises, you will lose your time. So it takes time to build it. If you want something very global, we have to go step by step, but it's a key element, obviously, in data sharing. Second element, I completely agree with Thierry. A key topics behind is the cost of this data sharing. And behind the cost, the question is not really a question of the marginal IT cost, I would say. The problem is, do we create a new intermediation inside the world? Because at the end, for example, in my world, and you all know that by heart, the reservation through the web is a great value for the consumer. But if the cost of that is 20% of the room, there is a problem in my value chain. So the question behind the data sharing is, do we only have, if I may, the cost of IT, and I will say the people behind, or do we create a new intermediation approach? That's the question for academic.
Yes, thank you for the question. And this is exactly, I mean, among the costs, it's also not only the IT cost, but the cost of reorganizing, rebuilding the business models, etc., of the various participants in a value chain. And of course, This is all about this. What is behind this loose notion of collaborative innovation system? You redefine the role and the business models of the various participants in the value chain because you do your business in a different way. And of course, the question is that the costs, they come in the short term. You have to. It's not IT cost again. It's reorganization, etc. There are risks because you don't know what will be the final outcome because you have competitors, etc., etc. And by the end, you have the question of how you share the values that has been created among the participants in the system. And that's exactly where trust means something. It's not only trust in the fact that your data will be hacked by some players, or only the question of the risk of the opportunistic behavior of a potential bad-minded orchestrator or etc. Yeah.
Thank you, and a few comments on just the panel. But first, we estimate that between aerospace industry and automotive industry, we have about 20-25% common supply chain, or common, let's say, same players selling to both industries. And even though it still remains marginal, potentially, to a lot of business economics for these common suppliers. Therefore, clearly, to have low entry barriers, very simple ways to access, because even those suppliers, the smallest ones, they even do not have an IT system in place. They just rely on emails and unstructured documents. So therefore, the way to address it is something very important, and it should be done at least cross industries, where at least they do not have to reinvest into headaches and because they share data with one industry and another one. So therefore, I think this notion of low entry barrier is essential. I share fully the view of Oliver to have a global approach, and this is very important. We should be, I would say, within a trust framework that scale globally, because our suppliers scale, and this national trust framework, indeed, will be done certainly with national authorities, and therefore we need to interoperate with them. However, also common statement, the trust comes by industry setup. Our aerospace organizations, they don't rely on any other industry to deliver this trust. We have some specificities. However, the mechanisms should be common. And this is where we believe that with Gaia-X and joining forces also with ITSA in order to specify this trust framework protocol in common that interoperate with data connectors protocol that join forces in order to make this trust happening across industries. And I'm really convinced that this is the way ahead.
Thank you very much. Oliver, you have...
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on what Frederic and also the previous speaker said. You have to reuse those artifacts. If some suppliers serve multiple industries, I do not want to have a connector for every single industry. That is not smart. Secondly, what we see right now, the value creation, it's not IT. I 100% agree to what has been said before. There's also a big business transformation that costs money. However, we see in our industry right now, despite that we are under peer pressure right now, that companies invest in an ecosystem like Catena or others, that you need this business transformation in order to have your businesses and your processes be ready for the future. Otherwise, it's not going to work. If you cannot just, I'm making an example, you cannot just introduce Gen AI, it's not going to change. If you introduce a new technology and you want to benefit, you also have to change your business and your way how you work. And the same is for data ecosystem, like the ones we just have shown. And the companies invest their money, not R&D spend, not research. They do it on operational costs because they see the benefits of a global platform or platform ecosystem approach like what has been presented here, because it creates innovation space for business and IT providers. It reduces the cost significantly, while it can be reused in order to stay compliant with all the regulatory tsunami that is coming our way from the EU Commission. And if you combine this, I think it's a pretty smart way, what we are all building here, that we can reuse, scale, and for especially globally interoperable with multiple industries and have an innovation room for new processes and technologies. I think that's pretty amazing. The question is, I promise, this is so complex. We have to boil it down to small little bits and pieces that people understand and give their journey. Because it's so much what this change. It's not just we introduce email, we introduced the web altogether as it is today, but 25 years ago, people would not understand. Back then, we also introduced step by step. We had an Alta Vista browser, we had email, and then over 20 years it developed and we all can cope with it. With a data ecosystem, it looks like almost we introduce everything what should be relevant in 5 years now, and that makes people really, really scratching their heads and make it understand. That's the most difficult thing, not the technology. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hubert.
Yeah, I would like to ask a question to the panelists. We have seen at the beginning of the week the report created by Mr. Mario Draghi, promoting a lot of new technology and research. Are you all in sync with what Lucas proposed, meaning that data sharing could become the innovation challenge in your industry, more than creating a more broadband communication and new technology?
Yes.
Honestly speaking, yes and no. The question again is, with something happened behind that, the way to collaborate with other sectors. The question is, do we have a collective benefit, or do we have a new intermediation? You can't imagine the cost of Google, in fact, for hospitality sector. That's a huge amount of money. So tomorrow, if we have another intermediation organizing the data sharing in the world, one or two guys, it will be very, very costly. So again, I like the idea of Oliver. It's a little bit as, it's more than a question of technique, it's a question of way of working. So the point of Oliver to say, 20 years ago, we were not able to imagine what is the web, what is an email box, what is an SMS. That's the same transformation. So it's a question of mind. And again, for me, the point is, we are too specialized in our activities today. So that's a big part of our weakness. Yeah. And it was key during the COVID. We was too specialized, so very weak. And we have to go back 20, 25 years behind and reimagine a way of working, for example, in Japanese world, between different sectors. Data sharing has to be the new approach, pushing in direction.
Thank you very much. Frederic? Yeah.
Yes. No, I believe it's a matter of defining, transforming existing processes based on reliable and secure new processes based on data sharing, which is today practically do not exist. Okay. It exists peer-to-peer or peer-to-many. And I think the next revolution in a stepwise approach, and I think it's important not to force and regulate on, to force organization to share data for the beauty of sharing data, because it's not the way it should be, but based on business needs, economic interest, common interest by different parties or for industrial sectors, I think it's true that data sharing has the power to make step change in economical competitiveness in Europe and for our industries.
Still have two call for to demand. So by Ulrich Haie for the CEO of Gaia-X.
Yeah, thank you very much, first of all, to all the panelists and Lucas, especially to your introductory presentation. And we heard about 40 years of data sharing. Eric, you mentioned EDI, yeah, which was invented in the late 60s and adopted in industry starting in the late 80s. Then we've been working for 20 years to create digital platforms. And finally, Skywise is a digital platform. Yeah, My John Deere is a digital platform. And Lucas, you explained the different steps to benefit from this data-driven, from the transformation of into data-driven business models, the efforts to be taken and the benefits we get. And you could put the same approach for digital platforms. And from my perspective, it is important to explain and to show where the benefits of data spaces compared to digital platforms, where it was, and I think, Frederic, you can confirm, and also Oliver, where it takes a lot of effort to connect participants to these digital platforms. And with the approach of data spaces through two elements, and Oliver, you mentioned them, besides security, which is a prerequisite, but having a common trust framework and agreeing on standards enables us to connect participants to a data space nearly automatically without this manual effort. And this is one of the main differences between digital platforms and data spaces. And I would like to put a proposal in the room, maybe to think about during the day, to adopt your analysis you did, your theory you did, to apply it to real-world cases and to really instantiate this theory using maybe one well-advanced data space like Catena-X and using it in another vertical, in an emerging vertical, let's say in finance. Yeah, how could a data space improve the businesses in the finance industry? And I would be very open and interested to have an exchange with you on how we could do that.
Thank you. Mario Campolargo.
Thank you very much for the presentations. I was triggered by a comment from Pierrick that says we are probably too much specialized at this moment in time and that this may be a weakness. So I was very interested to see all your presentations very much in ecosystems that come from a sector or an established integration model. But what I see is that when you think about data sharing, data economy, the benefit will come from linking data from unsuspected, potentially perceived as unrelated domains, health and economics, health and environment. If you think about intelligent territories, bringing together a set of data. Oliver also mentioned the digital twins, very much important, because once we look at data and then abstract information and make sense to take informed decisions, this is important. So my question is for you guys, I mean, are we in the moment where we can really open up the data spaces to incorporate multiple sectors, multiple stakeholders that have not yet been very much involved in the current integration models, the industrial integration models, sometimes only defined by business interest and not by societal interests? Are you in the verge of enlarging our challenge to that? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid, however, that I would not have the opportunity to give the floor to each of the panelists to reply to your question, because we'll have Frederic has to leave us, and I think Oliver as well. But a final comment, and we'll discuss over the coffee break with the other. Jakob, you want to make a point?
Yes, I just wanted to make sure that we mention that on the website of today's event, you will find a set of documents that might be of interest and use to you. In particular, I wanted to stress the fact that Lucas can, of course, only, in some sense, touch the surface for lack of time today of what he, together with Joëlle and Eric, have actually done in producing the white paper, which you will find at the bottom under the heading Related Documents, called Economics of Data Sharing. That's a PSL, Dauphine-X Institute joint position paper that has my high recommendation, and take a look at it. There's also a paper produced by Hubert Tradieu and Boris Otto on Europe in the global data economy, which kind of is very relevant for the last session today, in particular maybe. And also there's a document that we produced at the Gaia-X Institute a couple of years ago now on automated compliance, which is relevant for the first session in the afternoon. And in addition to that, you can also find ties back to last year's event. There's a synthesis of last year's event at this place. So please take a look at the bottom of the webpage. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jakob. And I close this first panel, but the discussion is not closed, of course. And we'll have a coffee break in what we call the foyer here in Dauphine. So when you get out of the conference room, there is a long corridor on the other side of the hall. And by the end of this long corridor, you have the foyer where we will have some coffee, a better coffee than the earlier coffee this morning. It's not the cruise coffee, it's from the traiteur, so usually it's better. And we'll have some snacks as well to, get some energy for the second panel coming up at 11:30 sharp. Okay, so thank you very much.
Okay, so here we are for the second roundtables. And it's about the business models of orchestrators. For some of you, maybe orchestrators is a very strange name. Why nobody speaks about data intermediary? It's theoretically the word, but in fact for us it's the regulatory word. So for the beginning, as you have seen with the previous timetable, Eustache will present the way we see the subject. And after, we will have a different point of view and maybe some contestation about this way of present. We will be very pleased to have contestation just to improve the robustness of our model. But so, the idea is first to have a presentation of Luca. You know him, I have not to present him. And then we will have a fantastic panel to show the different ingredients we can find behind the word of orchestrators. And as they are very different, there is no reason to have one before the other. So I choose to take the alphabetic order. And it's fantastic order because at the beginning, you will have the two women of the panel. So everything is all right. Now, Luca, the floor is yours. And we will see after, so Marie-Claude, then Thorsten Fueling, Laurent Lafay, and Sébastien Picardat.
Thank you, Joëlle, for this introduction. So today I have the pleasure to open this second session about the business model of orchestrator. Why do we care about orchestrator? Is because even though since this morning we are talking about collaboration, we are talking about ecosystem and kind of horizontal way of organizing this, those ecosystems, someone has to take the lead. And who could be this person? So the orchestrator is the person in charge of the orchestration. Okay. Then what is orchestration? The orchestration is a mission of coordination of the ecosystem. And we can divide orchestration in two main categories, two broad categories. First, there is the technical orchestration, which is providing the technical infrastructure, the common language, the standard necessary for allow to data sharing. Then you have a second level of orchestration, which is the strategic orchestration. As I mentioned in my first discussion this morning, this is about making people want to join the table to exchange data, and maximizing the value creation of the use cases. The orchestration, and especially the orchestrator, is not a monolith. They can be plural. You can have first multiple players within the same data sharing ecosystem. You can have, for instance, one strategic orchestrator at the ecosystem level, and then some technical orchestrator appointed case by case. And those orchestrators can be firms within the value chain that the stakeholder already know. They can be central or not. They can be outside of this value chain. They can be public, private, or hybrid. For those of you who read the position paper or already heard about it, we define the orchestration in two main characteristics that allow us to make a matrix. The first of the dimension is the alignment of interest. Does every stakeholder face the same need and need the same solution or not? The second characteristic is the centrality of the orchestrator within this value chain. Does every stakeholder already have a relationship with this orchestrator, and what is the type of relationship that they have with? Here, I want to adopt a second way of seeing the orchestrator, which is more related to the dynamic of data sharing ecosystem. In fact, they are, as we said, a process. And we can see three clear phases of the life of data sharing ecosystem. The first of all is the emergence, the second one is the achievement of the critical mass, and the third one is the expansion. And the data sharing orchestrator is the person in charge to make the data sharing ecosystem going from one stage to another one. And he will have to adapt his business model to the constraint relative to each of those stages. So, without being too theoretical, business model is about creating value and extracting a share of this value for being viable. And this logic, which is quite simple, is well reflected in the three stages that we isolate for data sharing life cycle. Because during the emergence phase, the most important and most crucial point will be to create value. Then once you create enough wealth stock, I would say, you achieve this critical mass, and then you can think about how to extract value. And during the expansion phase, you will have to go again in this process. This is the innovation part of it, to add new participants to the value chain, but also to increase the value created by your participants that are already within the ecosystem. So if we begin by the beginning, first, the emergence. We can define the emergence, let's say, when you have your first use case that is operational. And here, there is the importance of deciding the governance of the ecosystem. Someone has to take the lead, as I mentioned before, and to be the first to have a vision, to bring people together, and to decide what has to be done within our value chain. And then there is the question of founding the initial fixed cost, because you will need to create standard, you will need to create an infrastructure, technological one, and it's costly. So you have different choice. You can be founded by the orchestrator itself or by a really important participant within the ecosystem, but it goes with some cost, because then you can create some risk for participant, risk of neutrality. Is the orchestrator neutral enough, or does it do that for his own purpose? But it's really effective. Someone just brings the money and that's it. You can have a collective funding, which is more horizontal. Everyone participates and everyone decides in a kind of democratic way to the governance of the data sharing ecosystem, but then you face some coordination cost, especially if people are not aligned on what they want and what they need. You can have also subsidized from public authority. There is no need to recall why this can be a bit complicated, but it has some advantages to mitigate risk and to ensure, in a sense, neutrality. Often in the data sharing ecosystem that exists now, you will find a hybrid model with a bit of each type of founding. In this stage, I want to recall that data sharing ecosystems are innovative processes, meaning it's a long-term process, and you need to have this long-term vision at the beginning of the creation of the ecosystem. But at the same time, in this period of emergence, you also need to have a short-term vision, to design use cases that will allow to create direct value for participants, that incentivize them to join. I mean, you have to show them, to showcase them that they will gain something about participating to your ecosystem. So there is these ambivalences that need to be taken down by the orchestrator at the first stage of the ecosystem. Once you succeed to do that, you can go to the second stage. The second stage is about achieving the critical mass, meaning having the sufficient level of participation. You can define it by use cases, by data shared in your ecosystem, by number of participants, or whatever, but this is a number of activities, the level of activity that you need to start thinking about how I will extract value to finance the data sharing ecosystem and to not rely anymore on the external funding. You have three ways to extract value. There is two types of extracting value. The first one is the direct way, and the second one is the indirect way. For the direct way, you have three ways to extract value, and you can also do a combination of those three. The first one is subscription, which is very common. It has as an advantage is to be stable. You have a stable income within your life. And then you have entry fee. Entry fee has the advantages of being seen as investment by the stakeholders, so it can increase their loyalty. But then, on the long run, it can create some issue about keeping the flow coming in your ecosystem. And then you have the pay-per-use, meaning special tarification that is closer to the usage of the data sharing ecosystem by the participant, which is really helpful, especially if you have heterogeneous participants that will use in a really different ways your ecosystem. But then, as I mentioned, you can combine those. For instance, you can have different subscription price for different type of usage. And after that, you have the indirect way of capturing wealth coming from a data sharing ecosystem. This indirect way is more towards orchestrators that are central within the ecosystem. I will explain why. It's because basically it's about providing the service, the data sharing ecosystem services for free, and then gaining from the service and the exchange developed by the participant. This is the first level, or you have a second level. You are so central in the value chain that you will create the data sharing ecosystem. You will allow everyone to benefit from it. But as you are central in the value chain, the fact that everyone will be better, will have better process, or will be more efficient, then turns out that every relation that you have with each of them will be more optimized. And once you are viable, you set up your value capture mechanism, you can go to the expansion process. This is maybe the broader phase because it's more uncertain. And you can divide this stage into two parts. The first part is the enrichment of the ecosystem, meaning you have participants that are integrated to a given level, and then you will push them to be more and more integrated within your data sharing ecosystem. And areas you will find the logic of innovation and investing on the long run for innovation. But as I mentioned before, you will face some potential risk because you will ask people to share more sensitive data or to be more integrated within your ecosystem, and then there is this lock-in effect and opportunistic risk that comes in. You have a second dimension of the expansion, which is the enlargement. Then you will try to bring new people at the table, new value chain, new use cases. And with this logic, you will find again to the emergence phase, where you will need to lower the barrier of entry for new participants, to set up use cases that will allow them to extract direct benefits, and you will need to subsidize them. And then there is this new question about how we will find those use cases before they are viable. So what is important then is like expansion, advocate for neutral intermediaries, or at least advocate for trust, because you will start navigating into uncertainty and new direction has to be taken. And stakeholder would prefer to be sure that those directions are taken in the interest of the ecosystem and not in the interest of a small part of it, and especially not in the interest of the orchestrator. And I will finish on the two questions, because one could ask, where does this expansion end? And so far, we do not have answer. There is, I think, two solutions to that problem. Maybe there is natural boundary that you will face. I mean, you will bring like everyone to the table, and there is not many more person to bring. But I don't think that will be the case. Maybe one of the most possible answer to that question is like, when you will expand your data sharing ecosystem, you will face a new data sharing ecosystem in front of you. And then what's happened is still unclear, and I think it's a promising avenue for future research about competition between data sharing ecosystem. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Lucas. So I think I will not make any comment now, but I'm sure after. And I go to the panel. So the first panelist is Marie-Claude Charles. She's investment director at Caisse des Dépôts. And Caisse des Dépôts is one of the ingredients of the financing ecosystem you are speaking about, Lucas. So Marie-Claude.
Hello, thank you for inviting Caisse des Dépôts and that recognize the importance of the financing aspects of the expansion of data exchange. Thank you, Lucas, for your presentation that will articulate perfectly with what I'm going to present. So, I will present you the role of Caisse des Dépôts as an investor, what we do, what is our purpose, and what we aim at doing more specifically in data hubs. And as an investor, we have a lot of companies in portfolio. And before going into the business model, I will present you like some kind of on-premise analysis of the pain points we need to identify and the companies need to crack to succeed in deploying this project. So just to set the frame, you can hear about Caisse des Dépôts or Banque des Territoires. We do present ourselves as investor as Banque des Territoires, which is one of the fourth activities of Caisse des Dépôts that actually address the local territories. But this also includes public authorities, but as well companies and projects. So that's why we are doing investment. And we do offer a wide range of expertise in terms of sector, in terms of profile of person, and also in terms of financing that includes taking investment as some kind of venture capitalist in some project and companies. But we also do create joint ventures with actors to support some projects, and we consider to be strategic for France. As an institutional investor, we do act also as a private investor. We are an investisseur avisé, so we take minority interest, but always with other investors. So we are not like we represent the state, but we are really a private investor, and that's important just to consider how we do participate around financing roundtable. In the digital era, Banque des Territoires has always been considered as a trusted national third party, which is the purpose of Caisse des Dépôts, and that's why we do select a project we do invest in, taking into consideration that we are a trusted third party, and we do bring to the project we support this trust aspect. Caisse des Dépôts always invests its own equity, meaning that we can go to any project we consider relevant, we can be a long-term partner. We don't have this consideration like usual private equity funds. We have developed a real interest in all that data, and I will explain on a wide range what we do in terms of data, and then after what we do in terms of data exchange. Since a decade, we have started investing in various companies related to data, and I really appreciated what Laure de la Raudière has said when she introduced this morning. We have started to invest in the infrastructure, meaning fiber data centers. But now, for the topic we are talking about today, it's really a new type of infrastructure, and actually which is immaterial, and we will need to consider to deploy infrastructure. It really requires a huge amount of money, and I think and a huge involvement of all stakeholders just to succeed in deploying this infrastructure. So in our portfolio, and since a decade, so I was mentioning we have invested in infra. We are very known for our action in terms of fiber. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. We have also invested in technical operators and tools. So DAWEX is around the table with us, and we are at the capital of DAWEX. We have also invested in data hubs. So as for me, I'm on the board with Sébastien in Data Hub, but also in terms of airport with the Hub1 Data Trust Exchange, which is a joint venture with Hub1. We are also investors in Apidae. It's a data hub for tourism. And we also invested in other companies that are offering services in terms of data to local authorities and also to companies. We have Hexadon for public authorities. We have also Open Data Soft. We are currently, but I cannot go back to it, but give more details, but we are also supporting and trying to deploy new data hubs we are working on just to make to other sectors. Because for the moment we are here in agriculture, in airport, in tourism, but we aim at covering the sectors what we do consider as strategic. Because we think that all these sectors, and Laure de la Raudière was referring at some kind of transsectorial initiative, but today, I think we are at the beginning of building this, so I think we should consider it step by step. And us, Caisse des Dépôts, as an investor, we're trying to build different initiatives with different sectors, and mainly, and probably by having some kind of return on experience of what we consider, maybe we can make a unique model to emerge to build these platforms. But as of today, I think every sector is trying to assess which is the more relevant model, and we also need to take into consideration that the sectors are super different in terms of maturity to data, in terms of even actors, the stakeholders. But I will get back to this later on. So I think around the table, we all measure the importance of building this data sharing infrastructure. And as an infrastructure, we have to all have in mind that it will take years and really a lot of investment. I think it will be like 10 million euro, maybe 1,000 million euro. Today, we are just at the beginning, I think, of this period. I also appreciated the reference to an innovation process, because what do make an innovation succeed? I think we need to consider this, and just to replicate it to the different data hubs we have and data platforms we have around the table. So when preparing this presentation, it just came to my mind that actually, like, if we are presenting infrastructure, in a way, it can be related to project financing, meaning we have brownfield initiative and greenfield initiatives. For some of the data exchange orchestrators, they are, in a way, built out of the blue, like not by an industrial. So greenfield, that could be like built on use cases that are already identified by an industrial that is going to widespread the hubs of the exchange, or it can be like, for instance, Data Hub is some kind of real brownfield initiative. And we as investors, we do see all the pain points that need to be cracked just to have this initiative succeed. Hub1 Data Trust Exchange, which is airport, is more a greenfield initiative because it's Hub1 that is that is affiliated to Aéroport de Paris. So if I can make this parallel just to explain, and so the use case, I will go back on this later on, but is, I think, the heart of the reactor. Like with Luca was saying it, without a use case, nothing can emerge. And I think it's easier when you have like a greenfield initiative with use case that are already identified and that can be like almost plug and play. But you need to gather the data. But brownfield initiatives are more difficult and require much more investment, much more, and not only financial. I think it's in terms of investment of all the stakeholders, in terms of data users, but also data providers. So I think that are really the pain points that need to be identified and then to be shared between all the persons and all the companies that are working on make this data exchange platform succeed. I think there is also another pain point that needs to be cracked. It's the competition. we don't see any competition to data exchange, but I think, I don't know, it was mentioned before, there are a lot of peer-to-peer initiatives, and some companies, some projects, they just live with this, and they don't see the interest of using another data exchange, or maybe even sharing their data. It can be seen as some kind of threat. I want to take my data for me. And this is another pain point, I think another challenge that is perfectly identified is neutrality and also sovereignty. And I think regulation has worked a lot on this between all the evolutions recently issued on data intermediation. There is another point that we have also identified as investor comparing the different projects we are working with. It's also the cost of such infra. It's not only financial. Us at Caisse des Dépôts, we invested some millions, but probably not only. And I think Catena-X has invested really a lot, and we should all be able to invest that much. But it's also in terms of investment of credit that is taken by all the stakeholders, and like, I don't know, sharing your data on these platforms, subscribing to this platform, even if you don't have any use case that is identified. These are small initiatives by all the stakeholders that are around the table, but that will beyond the business model that need to be structured and confirmed. But it's a way of supporting these initiatives. And and just going to the heart of the success of deploying data exchange, it's a use case. But Sébastien will probably more illustrate this later. But for instance, in agriculture, as an investor, I have noticed that it's a sector which is super heterogeneous. In terms of stakeholders, you have farmers, you have big industrials, and they don't have the same needs in terms of use case. Even between the sector of agriculture, you have a filière, sorry, I don't know the word in English. You have filière, and they all have different, they all have different challenges, they all have different needs. And I think the main pain point for AgDataHub is just to show and to demonstrate to all its potential users the necessity of sharing data, so cracking the peer-to-peer system and mechanism already in place, just for instance for farmers that are maybe more remote to data use than industrial. So the use case has to be built. It requires a lot of money, of time, and probably it's not the prerogative of data hubs, but in a way they need to enroll the market to show, like, you need to share your data on the platforms, and you need to understand what value creation you can take from the platforms. So my presentation was really to summarize as an investor, what we have identified as of today as a main pain points that need to be cracked to make these data hubs on the first step at sector level, and maybe one day on a wider level, and that are breaking the competition, which is like peer-to-peer and existing mechanism, the fear to share data, also to communicate around the neutrality about these platforms. We do support, and that is supported by regulation, by the profile of investors, and like, of course, having the use case emerging, and that this is the prerogative of the companies, of the users, in addition to the platforms who are really deeply working on this, but I think like they need the help of other stakeholders to work on this and to demonstrate the value creation that will be brought to all the companies by having use case and then using data from the data exchange platform. And I forgot just to mention that as Caisse des Dépôts, we do support an association which is l'Association pour l'intermédiation des données, which is actually run by Sébastien, and that we are trying to make this association grow, by not only enrolling all the data exchange platform, but all the stakeholders, and just to crack and to communicate around the pain points that I was just mentioning. And that will manage us to move to the second step, which is critical mass. But as for me, as of today, like we are mainly on the first step. We are moving slowly to the second step, but we need to finance it, to mobilize all the stakeholders around the challenges of data exchange.
Thanks a lot, Marie-Claude. Now we are going to another sort of orchestrator, Thorsten Fueling. We heard about Airbus yet, but now it's another Airbus case, if I can explain it. But we have now the orchestrator of another use case where Airbus is present, and Thorsten Fueling is the Vice President Consulting and Business Development of the company, whose name is Supplion, for those who doesn't know Supplion.
I hope you know all Supplion. In 10 minutes you will. Many thanks for the invitation, and after the first briefing that Joëlle, you gave me, I was a little bit puzzled. What shall I say today? How to introduce Supplion? And then you fortunately sent me some white papers from Lucas, good white papers, I have to say. And then again, I was a little bit puzzled. What can I say? So the terminology orchestrator. Then I thought, is Supplion an orchestrator? And I didn't find there the link between the words and the models which have been there. And I thought, okay, first I wanted to say, okay, you came with this model and we are in this evolving stage. We are really mature and where we are. But then I said, okay, I go back 25 years, so it's easier. So that was a time where we had all mobiles, but not looking like that. Maybe the one with a little things on it and the numbers. So that was the time when Supplion was founded. We have been founded by industrial partners. So for the time being, it was in the automotive industry. This has been Bosch, Continental, Schaeffler, and ZF, and these are still the shareholders today. So they had the idea, we don't want to do things in a standalone position, we want to do things as a group. So focus was there on the supply chain. So maybe there might be other use cases, but they focus really on the supply chain. Today, I would say the most popular term is supply chain resilience. In the time, there have been different terminologies, but I mix them a little bit here. So they went ahead with the idea, we want to have there a portal where we have the same processes in the collaboration between a buying company and a selling company. We want to have the same processes established to have more and more people onboarded onto this ecosystem. Maybe it's an ecosystem that are all stakeholders, data providers. To find the right term is not that easy. What is very important from the beginning on, we have been purpose-driven. So that was the supply chain, to improve the supply chain. This, are you an orchestrator or what is a data space? Even software as a service or cloud was not available as term for the time being. And today we have more than 200 customers, buying company, which are part of our network, and more than 140,000 suppliers. So that really is a very, very big amount, I have to say. And we are focused on the supply chain area with a production material. I'm not talking about the NPM material where the bakery around the corner and other stores are also involved. I'm really talking about the supply chain, which at least for me as a supply chain guy is very important. But we are not only having in our portal our own solutions. Since years we open it for other solutions. So there are some customers which use us as their central entry point into the ecosystem, but they had other solutions which are integrated into our portal. Portal-wise itself, we also technically integrated into Catena-X, for example, or maybe in the future to Aerospace-X. And that is this EDC connector. That's a technical topic, to be honest. That is the easy part. But the use case and the value behind, that is really what matters, at least from my perspective. So that was one point, Luca, in your white paper, where you talked about use cases, and it's more the value behind. So you have to define or to find a value behind, and then you can establish a use case. If you start with use cases, maybe that would be a nice idea tossing session. Anyhow. And we also, our network, I have to say, that this 140,000 suppliers are globally. That is something like 40% of that are in Europe, 30% in Americas, and 30% in Asia, with a majority in China. So really, that is a global business, even if we are in hyphen small company in Bavaria. There is one specific use case, so I exchanged a little bit with Frederic, air supply. So it was the same story. Also, scaling is very important for you. So that was started in the automotive industry, and to make it here very bold, the OEMs and the tier ones are not the best buddies. So you see, our founders are the tier ones and not the OEMs. So that might be also something which came up in that story. But then there was an initiative coming from France, driven by, for the time being, not Boost Aerospace, but today it is Boost Aerospace. This has been founded then with Airbus, Dassault, Thales, and Safran behind it. And they wanted to have a solution for the aerospace industry. And that was the things what was more or less, can use the same slides as Frederic had used. We are producing all the stuff, or maybe we are not producing, we are collaborating and initiating this process between the involved stakeholders and parties to make sure that the supply and the material will be there. What is our stake in this one? So for the time being, we had a solution, but the aerospace industry is different. So they wanted to have a high-end solution. So we took 80% of what is available already and started a kind of a scaling in that industry, put some additional requirements for this industry on top of it. And then we developed together with them the solution where standardization is very important, because the idea from the beginning was the adoption in the community will only be there when there is a standardization provided. And also our responsibility as supply on is to work with this, to work on the standardization, and also to encourage all the suppliers and all the buy sides to work via this ecosystem, this network, or whatever term you want to use, and by the end of the day, to become a more robust supply chain. I have to say 80 to 90% of the supply for the European supply in the aero industry will go via our platform. So luckily we are supply on and not supply off. So if this would be the case, not only no airplane in the air, no car on the street, no train, no suburban train, nothing would be there, because the railway industry was the third industry, sub-industry we tackled. And there was a nice saying from a guy, so when we have seen the picture with the airplane, so it's a cylinder. Maybe one is putting wings on the left and right side, one is putting some rails, some wheels under it, and then it's a train, and another person is putting in front of it a propeller, and then it's a windcraft. So maybe, but the process behind it's itself, so the quality of the material, all the same requirements in different areas, and that also brought us to this scaling, what we are doing there. We are still going ahead there with our own solutions, which we provide in that area. It's not a marketing session here, sorry for that. But we are also, from the beginning, part of Gaia-X, and also from Catena-X and Aerospace-X, because we really believe in that more sharing definitely is with value add for the full community. And what is our part in that one? And they are distinguished. Where we are the standard setter, where we have the governance, where we invite and get their community on board, there will be a kind of a subscription model. I will not go into the details, but in the other area where we just gave some data to other people who can whatever do with that one, so you are welcome. But also have in mind that are not our data. the data belong to the companies which processing the data via our platform. So they have to give us the permission to provide somebody else the data. So maybe might be a specific situation we are in. And also, what is a challenge? Maybe we will have a session 3 and session 4 in this afternoon for us as an orchestrator. Also, I try to bring Supplion in a position in this maturity model. Where are we? New? No, definitely not, since 25 years. But we invented, we are very innovative. We started with the automotive, then it was the aerospace, then it was the rail, then it's Schneider Electric and other customers, Astemo in Japan, Hitachi, so all they are using the same processes, the same tools. So it's established in there and we are working there, but it's new in each industry. Or when we came up with new solutions like ESG, or what is very popular at the moment is capacity management, because you have to go supply chain-wise deeper into the supply chains or the value chains. So there we are in different situations and I struggle, to be honest, where we are at the moment there and what we do there. What might be helpful there, so I'm pretty sure that it will become more and more complex in the future. And we can't reduce the complexity, but we have to manage the complexity. If you see at the moment what different regulations came from the governance from the EU regarding ESG, or in the e-invoicing area, each country develops something by themselves. So that is very easy then for us to adopt to that one. And for the whole network, I have to say a second point I want to state here, we have to leverage what is there. So we have a real big network and we have to bring this into the other networks to make sure that nobody invents the wheel the second time. It's not needed. We only need there a kind of a handover process in there. Yep. That's it from my side.
Thank you very much. So Laurent Lafay, now it's the co-director of Dauphine-PSL. Everybody knows as for Supplion who is Dauphine-PSL, but I am sure that Laurent will try to explain a bit more. And so, Laurent, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Joëlle, and thank you for your invitation. So to introduce my speech, a few words about what we are doing at Dauphine-PSL. So Dauphine-PSL is a tech company, leader in data exchange solutions, and our clients create data ecosystem or data spaces that support various business cases and a combination of business models for the orchestrator and also for the participant. So Lucas introduced very well the topic. So at Dauphine-PSL, our technology implements Gaia-X trust framework, because trust is key for the orchestrator to create its own business. And also we implement existing open source connector like Eclipse EDC, and a set of features helping orchestrator and the participants to onboard and expose use cases, and also to be compliant with the new data circulation regulation in Europe, in Japan, in Korea, in Brazil, in the US, etc. And today I would like to share some lessons learned from 10 years of building a data ecosystem in a wide range of industry with multiple parameters of their own business models. First of all, in any business, and it's the case for data ecosystem, there are two ways of selling a product or service. The first one is to sell a direct gain, and the second is to sell a saving. Selling a gain is a promise about the future and is estimated by many variables, one of which is time, which defines a break-even point. For example, I am a retailer with many points of sales in France or Europe. I am the biggest on the market with 35% of market share. And if I decide to sell the data of my company to our ecosystem, for instance, my suppliers, I create new revenue thanks to this data, and it's what we called in the market data marketplace. The business could be one-sided, so the orchestrator is the only one data provider, but it could become very quickly a two-sided model. So the first data provider is also the orchestrator of the ecosystem, and the orchestrator onboards a new participant as data provider. From our experience, a break-even point is a matter of months in this case. Less than 12 months to 20, very short for a new business because you own your own data, so you quickly generate new revenue. But actually, selling again is not a priority for C-level. It's often a question of market position, so that's why I explain for retailers with big market share. So it's a niche market, data marketplace. And that's why I moved to the second way, the promise of selling a saving. And a saving can be calculated on different variables. I think the first participant explained very well in the industry. You could accelerate the maintenance of a product, the adaptation to a new regulation, so you understand very well how to calculate a saving. But selling a saving requires collaboration with your ecosystem, and they are not ready as you are. It could be SMEs, they don't care about your optimization, they want to focus on their own business. And in that case, the added value of the orchestrator is a way to explain, to onboard participants, and also to discover business cases for the common of the participant of the ecosystem. And you understand very well, it takes a long time. That's why Lucas explained a lot of combination on the business model for this kind of data ecosystem. So, to conclude, do not forget that data ecosystems are mainly business, B2B business. So it's not C2C or B2C. That's why at the beginning, 10 years ago, we are talking about platform. And platform is coming from the big tech and, selling common goods for the day. It's not the same thing in the industry, in the B2B way. So it takes time. And data ecosystems are not virtual. They are physical assets like roads, like energy networks or telco networks. So orchestrators are key operators of these networks. And now the good news that they are regulated in Europe and very soon in the G20 countries, especially with Data Governance Act, but also Data Act and other vertical regulation. The president of Arcep explained it this morning. And if these orchestrators are evaluated as vital for the economy, the entire economy, they need to be supported by, of course, investor and long-term investor. And we have done the network built for the last 20 centuries with telco, with roads, with savings. So for data ecosystem, it will be the same. And my last word, I hope the new European Commission will lead the topic thanks to the new European Data Union Strategy announced by the Ursula von der Leyen. So that's a good news. And in France, in Germany, we are ready for. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Laurent. Now the last, at least, Sébastien Picardat, with two hats, but I suppose that you will speak about your hat of orchestrator, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Joëlle. And I will take just 2 minutes to present AgDataHub and to speak about use case. And after that, don't worry, I will be focused on orchestrators, governance, and funding. AgDataHub was created 10 years ago in the head of some farmers, representative like Thierry, like FNSEA, Agents Agricoles, and COPA on EU level in order to control their data and to be open for data sharing initiative. So this is not new for farmers. And so AgDataHub is today one of the first investment for Caisse des Dépôts in data sharing, one of the first Gaia-X Lighthouse project with Catena-X, one of the first 10 data intermediary recognized on EU level. We are the coordinators of the prefiguration for the agriculture's data space by European Commission, and we want to be, we hope to be selected to be the consortium to deploy European data spaces. But after 5 years of experience, we are in the middle of a new era. First of all, because we learn about our failures and about the way we think about the market of data. What is really important, the first panel said, is to think about use cases. Why people want to share data, why data holders want to share data with data users, for which business case. And this is the most important thing. If we want to get participants on data space, on infrastructures, they need to find added value in their use cases. I know this is a basic thing, but we need to think about it. That's why sectorial approach is really important. Okay? And so for farmers, when Thierry wants to manage data in order to sell carbon credit, in order to improve his turnover, it's important. When he wants to manage his pesticide on the best way, he makes some savings. And don't forget also that he don't want to spend some time in his office. He prefers to be on his tractors and in the fields. Instead of, so he needs to simplify his life. So technology must improve farmers' revenue. That's why it is important to think about use cases. And to do so, farmers' organization, with the support of Caisse des Dépôts at the beginning, then with the French government also, 5 years ago, said we need to develop what we call now a data intermediary. 5 years ago, there was no DGR, okay? And so we need to say, okay, we need to interconnect 10 million farms with 500,000 farmers, partners ahead on backstream. How we can do that? With the DGR, we said, okay, there is a new status named Data Intermediation Service Providers. So we go through them because it is really clear things when you have a small farmers in the middle of the Massif Central, and when you have two major milking robots for your cows, and you need to have a clear balance, a fair relationships between data holders, so farmers, and the machinery people, only two global companies, you need to find a neutral organization to do so. That's why that data intermediation is really important. But when we listen to Arcep president, she said, we need to have harmonization to deploy DGR regulation. And when we see some big hyperscalers, they said, don't worry, go in our companies, we can collect, store, share, process data. So it's easier for you. But the problem is that when you read EU regulation, you said, okay, you can collect data, you can store data, at the end you can process data, but in the middle, in order to make data sharing, you need to create a new organization to be neutral, and you cannot store data and you cannot process data.
And we all know that when we are looking for some added value in data chain, we know that storage is a really efficient activities. Processing data with AI and all that stuff also. But when we speak about infrastructures like data sharing, we are always forgotten. And I said, what is your added value in the chain? Okay? And so there is two options. Luca said that, okay, for the business model, on one hand, you have one big company like Airbus, or maybe EDF in the energy, or some company like in Catena-X. Okay, we have some interest to operate our ecosystem because this is SME for improve suppliers, relationships. And so we are, in a way, okay to pay for it. And I learned the word from just today with Marie-Claude about greenfield and bluefields. It's a really important thing that this is brownfields. But in some case, like farming industry, this is greenfields. That's funny. Okay. And so here in this situation, we need to build a business model. Okay. And there is no big industrial to do so, because I think that Thierry said that John Deere cannot operate a data space. Okay, so we need to find something. And here, in speaking about economy, we are in a market failures. There is no big companies who will finance data space. That's why we said, okay, EU Commission or member states, you need to help us, specifically for small and medium companies. And here we open maybe a black box saying, are you sure that data intermediation can be private, 100% private? Do you think that the business model for data intermediation can be only private? After 5 years of experience, we say for the moment we didn't find a solution. We also participate to some clear benchmarking with a splendid report coordinated by Laure Le Tourneau and published today by Terra Nova and Digital New Deal think tank about data sharing in education, health, agriculture, mobility, building, industry. And we have always the same situation about it. And we didn't find the solution. And yesterday I was at Brussels at the DG Connect, and I tried to say, okay, maybe that only private funding will not be the solution at the end to operate a data space. And at the end, the Ivo Volman said, yes, I think that maybe we can speak about public services for not data sharing, for data sharing infrastructure. So we need to think that. And to finish, in order to say that we are not totally mad, every day you need to drink your water. And 2 centuries ago, you need to go to the well in the middle of the village or to the river. Now, you go to the restroom and you open the robinet and you have some water. And to do so, you need some public water distribution network. When you go on holidays, because it was holiday during 2 weeks, 2 months ago, my mother and my family-in-law is Greek. So I went to Greece. And I keep my Orange subscription. And I don't have to pay more because there is some roaming, even if it is Vodafone network there. So if we think that at the end, if we want to develop data space, specifically in farming industry, we don't think that there will be one unique European infrastructure. There will be a network of data sharing initiative. And with roaming, thanks to Gaia-X Clearinghouse. And we hope so that at the end, there will member states, EU Commission, and the farmers' representative will find an agreement in order to say that as food sovereignty is important for EU, we also think that tech sovereignty is important for some strategic fields like agriculture. So, thank you, Joëlle and Lucas and Eric for all what you are doing, because I think you open a new door, and EU Commission agrees to open it, and I think we have 3 years to find some solution, because at the end there will be no EU funding. Thank you for your attention.
Hi everyone, so I'm Anne-Sophie Taillandier, French hub of Gaia-X. So I have questions, so thank you all for the presentation. I think it was really interesting. You are talking about neutrality of data intermediary, which make me think like, why? Maybe it's more transparency. You never talked a lot about governance. I mean, the intermediary or the orchestrator, they are responsible, of course, of the services, the business models, but also to run the governance that has been decided by the data space or the ecosystem of actors around a data space. So when you talk about neutrality, why? Probably, I understand for AgData that you are talking with, you are dealing with agriculture farmers, and probably it's not their own business to define the governance within a data intermediary. But if I talk with Airbus or EDF around their own use cases, I think for them the orchestrator is not so neutral, but more garant of their governance that has been defined and decided by the ecosystem. So this is my question. Thank you.
I think we'll have 2 or more answers, but it's what I was trying to say at the beginning. If we choose the word of orchestrator, it's just to say that data intermediary could be a solution, and we try, and I think that Luca will explain you how we try. It's a part of the solution, but it's not all the solution. But maybe, Sébastien, do you want to be the first to answer, or you prefer Luca? You have the choice.
I agree with you, and Sophie. This is the governance and neutrality. It was not a theoretical question for us, because when the farmers said, okay, we want to keep a kind of control on the company, so we want to stay at the capital and be majority on that. But we saw at the end that some other company partners, like startups, said, okay, I don't want to use AgData because some of our competitors are at the capital, and so they can govern the company, and they think that they can manage the data transaction, which was not the case, but this is what they have in mind. And that's why, after 6 months of discussion with the French government, in June, just between the 2 rounds of the legislative election, the French government said that, okay, we agree to become a majority in AgData companies, so that it's a way to stay neutral and to provide some guarantee that the company is led by general interest and not from private interest. So this is for this point. About transaction clarity or transparency, we implemented the DGA regulation. So, I mean, everything is audited. That will be regulated by Arcep. So this is more technical or legal aspect, like all operational processes.
Sorry, just if I can complete what just Sébastien has just indicated. Actually, at Caisse des Dépôts, a couple of years ago, we have invested not in equity, but into Numalim, which was a platform of agroalimentaire sector. And neutrality is super important because it was supported by a big industrial. And then in terms of agroalimentaire, like the consumer is super powerful because you had a lot of scandal, and there was also like a competitor, the Yuka. And then no one, almost, it was very difficult for Numalim, which has actually been liquidated since, to gather on this platform the data sharing, because everyone was challenging the fact that it was actually run and the data was gathered by the industrial. And this is a perfect example how neutrality is like a key point in data sharing and data using, because even consumers, they consider they could not rely because it was run by industrials that always like, I don't know, betray the consumer. And like small industrial did not want to share as well their data because it was run by big industries. So that's a perfect example why neutrality, it's not the only reason, but was one of the main reasons the project failed.
And maybe just to conclude on that note, I think neutrality is also required because data sharing ecosystems do not come out of nowhere. They are based on value chain, they are based on stakeholders that know each other, and there is potential competitive friction between them. And as we said, like sharing data is not trivial. So this competitive friction can advocate in favor of neutral intermediaries, because if not, then it could be really hard. I mean, this competitive friction can be like a break to share data and could create too much risk. So neutrality can ensure, in a sense, that those risks are minimized. Transparency is also a key point, but I mean, being transparent does not mean that you are not interested or that you will not misuse the data on not respecting the competition.
There.
If I may, sorry, I just maybe from
sure.
Our experience in the past, maybe you mentioned sometimes we have also industrial investors, funders. So from the beginning, it was not that easy to convince the other parties, the other participants, which are now our stakeholders, to join supply on, but it worked out over time. So from the beginning, our solution is M2N. So it's not a one solution. Is in this solution, all buying companies, they are seeing all selling companies and other way around. So that is one solution, including also air supply. So it's open from the beginning. Never have been different since 25 years. And also when it's not Airbus only, so they came up with this Boost Aerospace Consortium, which is in very close collaboration with the GFAS. Maybe you have done the same in this industry. I'm not so familiar with your industry, I have to say, but I agree. So this is a process you have to do to keep your neutrality, and that is very important for us. And maybe if you don't have this, you are lost. Nobody will trust you.
Yeah.
Thorsten, since you have the microphone, let me ask you a question which is for me very important to get an answer. You have been created by automotive manufacturer in Germany. Boost Aerospace is an absolutely great success, regrouping 4 key aeronautic providers, as you said, Airbus, Safran, Thales, and Dassault Aviation. First question, why is it that for such a very specific business for France, they have chosen a German provider for orchestrator? But second question, and see no irony in my question, why is it that our friend Oliver has not decided, Oliver Ganser has not decided for Catena-X to use Supplion as its orchestrator?
Oh, there are many questions. Answer first is made in Germany. That was the reason. So for the time being, they Boost Aerospace made a screening on the market, which platform or which provider might be there. And to be honest, for the time being, in 2008, it was only Supplion. So it was Supplion against Supplion. It was very, very easy for the time being. So, and this Boost Aerospace, they are thinking European. Maybe, you know, they're Boeing and Airbus, 2 big players on the market. We forget the Chinese market with this with the providers there, but Embraer was bought by Boeing and stuff like that. Leonardo, for example, Italian player, is also in this consortium, not a founder, because not possible for them to become a founder anymore. The other question, so what this orchestrator, so we are, as I said, we are purpose driven. Our purpose is not to be an orchestrator. So if it is around supply chain, and as far as I know, maybe Oliver can answer this question better than I can, the use cases which came up there have been different to our use case. So they don't work on the supply chain management. Why do they do? Because also BMW is our customer, is also working with Supplion in the supply chain management. But Catena-X, they're looking for new use cases, which we don't have on our mind. So then we are talking about a technical orchestrator. I'm a supply chain guy, sorry.
Thank you. Madame Charles, you spoke a lot about the investments that Caisse des Dépôts does in the necessary infrastructure for the data economy. Do you see the focus more being on the physical infrastructure still, on networking, data centers and so forth? Or do you also mean with infrastructure, software, capabilities, legal support, so these non-hardware items?
I think it's in a way it's the life cycle, and Laurent was pointing it out. I think like our first investments were mainly in telecom and fiber infrastructure. So we are currently noticing that we are reaching an end in this type of invest we are actually currently divesting from. And now the national territory is equipped and almost running 100% on this part. We see that the market is moving in another type of infrastructure, and then we support by investing in data exchange, which is some kind in a way immaterial infrastructure, but also in all services around and capabilities. So we are, I just mentioned what we do mainly regarding data orchestration, but of course we are investing along the value chain, but also following this life cycle of digitalization and data-driven economy.
Eric.
Yeah, clearly we have around the table two contrasted cases of development of orchestrators with AgData on the one hand and Supplion on the other hand. And I think this is interesting to point out. In a sense, I have the feeling that AgData Hub follows this model of being the orchestrator for a whole value chain in different functions. And so, of course, then the logic is to cover all the way those functions are specifically managed in a value chain in an industry. Okay, and so you have a kind of industry biased system. On the other hand, or by contrast, this was the last intervention by Thorsten Fühling. Supplion consider itself as a specialist of logistic in a sense, and then it can develop. So it's around a function that is transverse to many industries, and that also in the case of supply chain in many industries. In fact, the supply chain integrate players from different industries. So the model can be replicated in a sense in many industries. So we have the same name, or either orchestrator or intermediary, but in fact for different vision, in a sense, of what is done in the data sharing ecosystem. Of course, the two might be combined, because it might be the case that for logistic operation, Sébastien will rely on the solution provided by supply on. So in a sense, supply on and this function approach of data intermediation or data sharing, etc., is closer to the concept of infrastructure, like the networks, like the physical networks we have in telecom or in transportation, etc., etc. While on the other hand, Agdata Hub is more on the business processes, and to a large extent, it might explain why there are so, often so many, such a large fuzziness in discussing, in fact, the role of intermediaries. And Laurent is also, with Dauphine-PSL, is providing infrastructure, while Sébastien, again, is providing service to the user. Of course, you are providing service, but you understand me, okay? So value-added services versus infrastructure service, it doesn't mean anything about who brings value, but so you have this is a model that is very well known in telecom and in the digital industry, where you had this OSI system, OSI system of layers, where you have the infrastructure and then the services with more and more value added. And it might be the case that, of course, both the technical requirements, the business opportunities, and the regulatory issues are different for those different type of orchestrators, intermediaries, call it whatever you like. But I think this is very interesting to contrast.
If I may, that's very interesting what you say, but maybe Thorsten will elaborate on this. But for me, the use case in logistics was like in its DNA already pre-existing, whereas in agriculture, use cases are just created, and maybe like that's the challenge of Agdata Hub, is just to create use cases, just to have the data users and data providers going on the platform. And that's just to go back to the pain points of making this initiative succeeding. I think it's just like everyone has to work on one side on having these use cases emerging, and then maybe data orchestrator can focus on the DNA of just like gathering data.
After I will give you the floor, but if I may, I think it's partly the truth, but not only partly, because if I look at Agdata Hub, it's also a way to give more power and more part of the value added to the farmers. We have use case, but the use case are in the hands of some, I will not say monopoly, but sort of one. So the problem is and it's not easy, is to find a new business model that agree to the big ones, because we need them, but it's not completely the same way of share the value. And it's very complex to change. It's more complex to change a business model, because we have, on some case, we have it, than to invent new ones. Oui, so I'm not, sorry. Bon, yeah, too much, sorry. But it was I have the possibility to give to myself the floor. So, Mario.
Thanks, and I was actually reflecting on the same way of view, because we have seen here cases where the ecosystem is, I'm going to abuse a bit the concept to simplify, like you, Eric, more or less self-defined, corresponds to a current business model to which the data adds value. when you think about farmers and this mix between providers and beneficiaries, and we mix them all together, making that the user becomes and the consumer becomes a prosumer, in fact. The challenge is big. But in the end, I think that if you replace data with goods and look to the past, we had already those similar business models. And we have the guys that do only business to business, and then suddenly you decide to actually enter a bit on business to consumer because the consumer is more informed and is able to exploit that. And so what we are seeing, in my view, is that on the data, we are just at the very beginning. So obviously, we need the big supply chains, the captains of industry to exploit the data. But I think that in the longer run, you will see a blossoming of these data spaces, not just to the traditional actors. And here we see already the intermediaries or orchestrators coming up, but data marketplaces will emerge, and they will be used on business to business, on business to consumer, or even maybe on consumer to consumer, let alone the role that public authorities may have on open data and things like this. But it's an interesting reflection. Thank you.
Yes, just, I mean, different kinds of orchestrators, or whatever you like. It's different of scale also. In the case of agriculture, we could start from many to actually few. But the real challenge is to go from many and to give back the value to many. And that's a real case. And to produce and to go through this way, you need to protect first. That's why we need to have strong regulation and a strong investment from the state. Because if it's not state who go to this kind of organization, how to like it was saying at the moment, how to protect the base and how to ensure the neutrality. So that's why actually we need to have a strong investment of state in this kind of organization, because it's the challenge is go from many to many, and very different from the other organization, and because the data from few and go to few, and the value is for few. So it's very different.
Hubert and Jakob.
Yeah, another question to you, Thorsten, since you are there. At the beginning of Boost Aerospace, someone was wise enough to decide for the fees to be paid by the buyer and for the fees to be paid by the supplier in such a way it has been acceptable by both parties, expecting that at one point the network effect will take off. Who has invented those fees? Is it Supplion or is it the Boost Aerospace board?
Somebody here from the Boost Aerospace board? I hope not. So that is our price model since 25 years from the beginning. So it was there, and it's not. It's the same price model. We have one price model. It's the same in the aerospace industry.
Meaning that the people who have invented the panacea, how much to pay for part supplier, how much to pay for buyer, is Supplion, and you have simply proposed that model to Boost Aerospace, and from there, the takeoff took place. Is that right?
There have been some discussions, but yes. Bottom line is it's one price model on our side.
Meaning that at the end, you are the one who have been brave enough to say, our economical model is likely to work, and we take the risk that we cover our cost buy that kind of model. Is that the case?
Thank you.
Thank you. I guess this is something for you, Lucas, right?
My feeling is that no, they don't take any risk because they have before the automotive industry, so they know they cover the cost.
Yeah, but Joëlle, we have said that all Amazon and all the GAFAM, they have been genius because they have invented an economical model free for some and paying advertising for the other. This is what makes them rich at the end. And I guess at the end, Cyprien was successful because of that.
Sorry, Hubert, but TF1 was on the same model. They don't invent it. Sorry, but you know, it's important to know the story, even if after you have the scaling up, they scale up the model of TF1. Jakob, you want to...
Yeah, I was wondering if, Lucas, if you step back, and also Joëlle and Eric, from maybe the specific topic here and also encompassing the topic of the first session in total. You have in the position paper a nice systematic for understanding, you know, the kinds of benefits that participants in data ecosystems might gain. And you have kind of a progressive model, and one stage is optimization, and let's call it simply maybe cost saving. And then another stage is, we could call it innovation, product innovation. So my question is, if you sort of step back and reflect on the input that you've been analyzing in the course of making this study, would it be fair to say that up until now, the main driver has been optimization and cost saving? Maybe you want to comment on that.
Yes, totally. It's totally about cost saving so far because this is what we know. I mean, what participants know, what stakeholders know. It's more easy to like optimize something that exists already than creating something that do not exist already.
Does that imply that we may have some sort of problem of risk willingness?
I mean, there is, yeah, linked to uncertainty and to risk too. But again, this is more easy to optimize something that exists already, and this is more direct as a gain.
Hubert, Sven, Eric?
Yeah, maybe
just to be sure, Luca, when you show these 4 layers, cost saving up to the 4th level, which was innovation and new product, you take for granted that jumping directly to number 4 because it makes the most money is unlikely to be successful.
Yes, you can try, but there is no chance to.
Yeah, I can underline only that what we are seeing actually is also cost-driven, cost optimization cases, mainly driven because when you have a platform economy established and then many-to-many and the network scaling effect, nobody's knowing whether you're getting and earning the money. For that reason, the real innovation from my point of view comes when a network of network effects plays in, because then you're playing with data that you not have seen from ecosystems that you're not aware beforehand, and then you can monetize and boost innovations. But actually I see uncertainty, lack of trust, and of course the optimization of the processes are the drivers to really come into the data space ecosystems from my point of view.
Eric, and maybe...
Yes, I fully agree. This is exactly the point why you should consider the development of data sharing ecosystem in terms of collective innovation process. Of course, on the paper, a radical innovation is possible, okay, and it's worth, and it's a priori it's more profitable. But then the problem is that you are facing a collectivity of stakeholders who have different interests, different priorities. So it's why, in fact, the way it works in practice is to start by developing simple, let's say, application optimization process. It's technically difficult, it's et cetera, but still, and then you have direct effect for all the stakeholders in the value chain, and then it generates potentially trust, but it generates something else, which is basically shared data, shared analytics, and it's how, in fact, you identify opportunities of enhancements of your process, etc., etc. And if you think about it, this is exactly what has been going on in the world globally, but especially in Western industries since 1980s or of course it started before, but the generalization of this process of managing process, business process, production process, etc., through digital systems has been generating a tremendous amount of data that can be collected, gathered, etc., etc., and before all analyzed, and you identify your weakness, you identify the way you can turn, you can change a process, you can algorithmize some function, some management function, etc., and you build algorithm with increasing complexity, managing increasingly complex system, and by the end, totally reshaping the way you run the industry. But it's only manageable in an incremental process, because switching to a new model directly, yes, new entrants can do that, okay? SpaceX can get into the business and build, with a lot of cash, by the way, but build a new way of considering the space industry, the service, and the way you manufacture space engines. But the stakeholders and the value chain and the many people, the many participants in value chains that are already there, they have no way to manage this radical innovation process. And by the end, of course, it takes more time, etc., etc., but by the end, you totally change the value chain. Okay, so that's why you have this necessity for the economics of data sharing to rely on this step-by-step process.
Maybe quick comment. I like your idea regarding standardization of business processes, and we, I think, don't underestimate the value for the small medium enterprise segment, right? We are talking with Airbus, BMW, and other big players. Of course, data infrastructure is established mainly at these bigger ones, but to make data sharing possible for the whole chain, for the smaller ones, it's a huge benefit, right? To have it digitalized, to have the transparency. They have all these data infrastructure systems not in place yet. For that reason, I think this is a huge value for them, from my point of view, underlines your point.
Okay, I think now, thank you very much for all the interventions, all the people now, and we will have 2 other very interesting sessions after lunch. Now it's time of lunch.